as though I have conquered death. I live death every day. I am surrounded by it, smothered by it. Look at you now. He would have everlasting life. You seek to defy death, yet you cannot even defy sleep. And how alike sleep is to death. It is a painted death.
You can't have that cookie, Elmo. Rocco wants to eat it.
I have tried to be your friend, but you will not listen to me. So you invited this monster. Don't make me kill somebody!
Good morning, come on in. Coffee's good, fresh and hot. There's a waffle in the baker on the grill. We're making bacon. You're always welcome back.
Charge!
There's a fire beneath my skin. There's a fever that makes me ill. Gotta love, a love that kills. I got 24 hours to live. Come back. I'm down on my knees. Come back. I'm begging you, please.
Hello, everyone. It is great to see you. Welcome to the Waffle Lodge. Welcome to Shanth and Jetty Art. Just let me see who we got in the chat real quick, and then we're going to get into our guest tonight. Someone whose work I'm a big fan of, and who is, of course, a just terrific guy all around. So let's see who we've got here. We've got Stephen Rockwood, who was in here early. I do want to say that I think that Rob was in here first, but then his comment disappeared. I don't know what happened. We've got American Comics Company here. It's great to have you here. You're always in good company with American Comics Company. You've got John in the chat. John, it's great to see you. Oz Great Sage, great to see you, my friend. Sumo Thori, great to have you here. John again. Arthur line. I'm going to try to get that right one of these days. I'm probably pronouncing that completely wrong. And let's see who else we've got here. Stephen Rockwood. Okay, what we doing? We doing a lot here. It's going to be fun. Matt Hepp is here. Good to see you. Yeah, you got to get some waffles, guys. Ibex Universe, great to see you as well. Hail Shanth, hail Bancroft, of course, and chat. It's great to see you. Cranberry Langers is here. Gosh, it's all about food, and we aren't even, out of the gates yet. And I think that is everybody. We've got OC Steve coming in right there at the last second there. It is great to see all of you guys. Let's bring in our guest without further ado, a very busy man. Up there with the hardest working people in Comicsgate, and which includes Eric Weathers, who is lettering somebody right now, like a person. We've got the man himself, Michael Bancroft. It is great to see you, man. How you doing?
It's great to be here, Shanth. It really is. I am very busy. I had to race over to pick up Clark from kindergarten, race back, get my whole setup here so that we can be ready and put on a good show. This is the first official Painted Death promotion outside of my own channel, and I'm honored to do it, kick it off on NGD Art.
So for anybody who is wondering what Painted Death is, which I don't think anybody in this chat is, but for anybody watching this later, Painted Death has got its email list, sign up list already set up. The link for that is in the description. So if you have not yet signed up to get on the mailing list for the Lucent sequel titled Painted Death, get on Painted Death now. I am looking forward to it. The trailer looks awesome. It's great to see, and I see Aldous in the chat there. It's good to see you, Aldous. Yeah, everybody, Pops Van Sant coming into this stream. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about, talking with you about the book and all of these, various aspects of the stuff that you're interested in. I was really excited. And there's all these questions started coming up in my mind about you that I know are the case. And I go, oh, well, geez, I don't know all the detail about it or how it all started. So I have to ask a couple of questions. I'm actually going to give you a couple warm-up questions, I decided.
Let's do it.
These are going to be rough or good or fun or whatever. So I was like, how do I start a conversation with Michael in a way that he hasn't had it started with before? Like, I can see you feeling, you're going, where is this going? Where is this going? So I grabbed a couple of questions off of a documentary on J.K. Rowling called A Year in the Life. And I know that we've talked a little bit about Harry Potter, and we've talked a little bit about. Have you seen that? Have you seen that documentary?
I have, yes. Good. I saw it ages ago, and then I watched it again after you shared it with me because I remember that I enjoyed it, and I wanted to watch it post her cancellation. And just look back on how the deference that they used to have for her that they no longer have.
You can see in that documentary what an evil person she clearly was. I mean, it was on the surface, right? When she broke down in that supposed apartment that she was living in when she was on, government benefits, I was like, you monster, you monster lying in wait. You're not going to get me, JK. You're not. So here's a question for you. Here's some questions I grabbed from it. I didn't grab some of the most, some of them I was like, there's no way I'm asking Michael that, but here's a good one for you. What's your favorite virtue?
Oh, you did put me in the hot seat. I'm not ready for these sorts of questions.
I know, you just picked up
favorite virtue in someone.
Just favorite virtue. Can be in yourself, anyone.
Well, this is going to sound very J.K. Rowling because I think she might have even said the same thing. I can't remember, but I would say bravery.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. What vice do you most despise?
I don't know if I know the exact name of all the vices.
Gambling.
But, I guess
no, go ahead. No, go
not
ahead.
Gambling. No, I have a soft spot in my heart for gambling.
I know.
I guess it would be look, it's all wrapped up in, they say like sloth, but it's not necessarily that. It's sort of more like laziness, and I'm not just talking about relaxing too much. Like, this is something that we have
Like
one
ambivalence?
we have one shot at life.
Mm-hmm.
We get a short window, and you never know when it's going to end.
Yeah.
And everything, all of this is, available to us now, and we can do so many things that our ancestors never could, and people just waste it on laziness or lack of curiosity and all that sort of stuff. And it just seems to me it's criminal to waste the opportunities that so many of us have. I try. That's something like I try to do the opposite of that. So I guess that's like, I'm not saying I'm always successful, but try. So I guess that's sort of my opposite.
Well, here's one for you that's kind of almost a strange pivot off of this. What vice are you most willing to forgive in other people?
Is gambling a vice?
I don't really count. I mean, it can be a vice for some people, but I mean in general.
A bit envy, I guess.
Envy, yeah.
It's natural human response, and it's something that we have to rise above. We have to not be so animalistic and let our emotions dictate our decisions day to day, but the emotions are going to be there nonetheless.
Yeah.
And as someone who's been in a position pretty much my whole life where I had to sort of watch from the sidelines while others succeeded immensely, it is very gratifying to finally feel like I'm on the cusp of getting somewhere. The people might actually be looking at me enviously, and so I appreciate that. And then you try and say, look, you can't let that stuff take hold. But I understand
you can forgive that
the impulse.
Wow, that's great, man. And then here's I love this one. What's your most marked characteristic?
It would be my temperament. My temperament has been the secret to my success my whole life. I never shoot from the hip. I never get worked up. Even when I get angry, if I notice myself starting to get angry, I usually isolate and just deal with it myself, so I'm not putting it onto others. But that got me through poker. That's why I was able to succeed in poker, where all my friends who was just as interested in it couldn't. Was the temperament. And I think that's what has gotten me to the point where I'm in comics as well, and YouTube. So
yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So here's one. What do you most value about your friends?
I would say their company. I don't ask for anything more than their company. I love the bands. Just hanging out, chilling out, enjoying each other's company. You can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah.
I don't ask of them anything else. And they know that.
Yeah. What's your favorite occupation?
What do you mean by occupation?
Well, I'll give you this one. J.K. Rowling said being a writer when she answered it. So, what's your favorite?
My favorite thing to do is writing, is story building, storytelling, and the drawing feeds into that, the streaming feeds into that, all that sort of stuff. Being part of Comicsgate feeds into that. But if I have to say when I'm at my happiest doing something, it's world building, it's crafting the story. That's the Lucent. There's a reason why I've been doing it now for 12 years.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that too.
That's something I really because I love it. Because I love it, and I notice it becomes more real. You get better at it, and I think as you get better at it, you want to do more of it.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the last one from the Rowling thing that I always like. What is your dream of happiness?
It's always health, family health. Yeah. Like I don't need much else than everyone's healthy in my family, and we are, we're fine. We're not. I don't need. I was talking about this with Mel the other day. Mr. Beast was on YouTube, and he was saying the same thing. He's got all the money in the world, but he never spends it because what does he need? And I thought, I think we would be the same. As long as we had a roof over our heads and our kids were healthy, you don't really need anything more than that. So, I need to work. That's if I'm forced to not do anything, I start going stir crazy. So here's my idea of hell would be just sitting at a beach for a week with my feet up. That would be, I couldn't last a day doing that. I literally couldn't. So, give me something to work on. I'm happy, but pure happiness is, everyone's healthy and fine.
Yeah. I remember the first time Lauren took me to the beach, we went out there with the chairs, we sat down, and I said, so what are we going to do?
I know,
she said, we're doing it. And I went,
no,
no. It's one of those things, but it's
maybe that's why I loved Sherlock so much. I was like, you're not necessarily like him, but I understand him. He cannot sit still.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing too. And the thing about those questions, and when I was thinking about talking with you, and I was thinking about the kinds of conversations that I think are really good for people to see, if someone's coming into Comicsgate fresh, and they don't know who any of us are. They don't know, what this whole thing is. They're just trying to get to meet creators and see what things are about, because we do have this, like any group that's been around for a while, we do have this, massive, lore at this point that's built up over, all the years. And the thing, I was thinking about when we were, when I was preparing for this was that this is with every book you're doing. And I think with every book that comes from, overnight successes like yourself, right? Like you discovered comics right before you launched the Lucent.
Yeah.
And, had never heard of it a day in your life. You came in, you were one of those 40 somethings jumping on the bandwagon. Maybe, I don't know if you were in your 30s at that point, who knows? You were maybe your teens. I'm not sure. I can't tell where things are.
Me.
So when I look at something like the Lucent Painted Death, and again, guys, for anybody who's just come in, if you have not signed up for the email list yet, for the mailing list for that, you're going to want to do that. That campaign is going to be launching, I believe, what did you say in the next, ballpark?
Mid-year is what I'm shooting for.
Excellent.
And can I just say about that mailing list, I have exactly 267 people on that mailing list. That is the number I went live with for Waking Dream. And I had that list going for about 6 months, I think, building that up. Most of it I got from John and Cecil's show. But that's very cool that to start the sort of promotional tour of this book is already starting with 267. So thank you, Comicsgate.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you this. Everybody I know is really excited about that book. And, for me, I actually, before we were talking today, I went back and looked at our first meeting because it's on YouTube. Our first conversation.
We can do that.
It's kind of crazy.
CG.
Yeah, it's 6 months. And you said something to me. I just was like, I wonder if there's any, something in here I can sort of pull out. And I remember you said something to me when I was looking at it. And you said, Sean, you're coming into Comicsgate at a really great time because we're pretty much past all of the drama, intensity, and craziness. And then I was sitting here and I went to Twitter and I was like, anyway, my point is this, is that, I love that's a perfectly timed to have a drink.
Yeah.
But the thing about it for me is that this to me, Painted Death and the Lucent, every book you do to me is a culmination of so many years working on this. It's not just a sequel to the Lucent. It's actually a part of this journey that goes back to webcomics. And before we get to that, which was, I know, over a decade ago, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, which was, the biggest one was there a comic book, was there a first comic book you remember as a kid you saw that got you hooked? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
Yeah, I actually have it here. Unfortunately, I've got things all stacked up.
No, don't cause an avalanche.
I usually have it within. I usually have it within yanking reach, but we've done a little bit of a cleanup here, so I don't know where it is at the moment. But it was Web of Spider-Man. It was somewhere in the 80s or something like that. That was all my friends were into comics, and I was like, all right, well, I'll go check it out. And this was back in the day. You just ride your bike up to. We have news agents, which are stores that sell magazines, newspapers, and at the time they would have a big long. Don't let Rob Arnold lead you astray. There was a massive comic book section.
Yeah.
DC, Marvel, Indies, whatever. And I just picked the book that I thought looked the coolest, which happened to be a issue of Web of Spider-Man. I liked it so much, I went back when the new comics came in, and I bought another Spider-Man comic, and that was a Amazing Spider-Man with cardiac arrest in it, and it was a gatefold cover, and it was just a non-stop action fest. I thought it, I was 11. I thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen, and from then I was collecting. Went from Spider-Man to Ghost Rider because they kept doing, they do like crossovers and stuff.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool as well.
They put time into it back then. They thought,
yeah. Well, they took it too far eventually because they did sort of take it too far, and that kicked me out of the hobby because I didn't have that much money to follow all the stories, and they were just milking us. But yeah, that's what got me into comics back in 91 or something like that.
So here's my next question, because I was not reading Web of Spider-Man. I was one of those people who got into, Spider-Man via Todd McFarlane and David Michelinie or Michelini. I'm not sure I pronounced his name.
Yep.
But a brilliant writer. And so I'm fascinated by that. Was it the story that pulled you into comics, or was it the artwork, or was it just to you where they just meshed together?
I thought the artwork was cool. Is it Bagley? He was always my favorite. I thought the artwork was cool, and in very short order, I wanted to be a comic book artist. So I used to have them sitting around as well, like my old tracings and attempted drawings and stuff like that. Straight away, I wanted to be a comic book artist, but it was just, a 11, 12-year-old sort of idea. Someone actually said to me, you can't be a comic book artist as a job. That's not a real job. So I just sort of put that to the side, and here I am all these years later trying to do it again.
Yeah, and now we've learned it's true, and but that's the thing that interested me about it too, because I was going to ask, the other question I had here was and I would kind of count tracing those books and doing that kind of thing, but how old were you when you started trying to draw your first comic pages? Was that the time?
Oh, that was back then, yeah. So 93,
12.
and I failed every single time because you have no understanding of anything. You're looking at the end product. It's like looking at a car or a motorbike, and then just going, all right, I'm going to build that just based off what I see. So you go into it, and you have no idea what you're doing, and it seems really hard. And it is hard, but there's a way to do it, and I didn't have any of the resources. This is obviously pre-internet, so anything that I started, I gave up because it was just, you could tell very quickly the end product wasn't going to be something I'd be happy with, so I would give up. It wasn't until now I kept up drawing on and off the whole way. So that's why when I actually decided that the Lucent, a story that I'd been writing, actually it used to be called The Woken originally.
No.
Thank you, social justice warriors. For picking that word. I prefer the Lucent though. What's that?
Have you talked about that a lot?
Yeah, fair amount. So it started.
I can't believe I haven't heard that before. That's horrifying.
It started off as The Woken back in, I'd say 2008, 2007 or something. And it was, when it was a web comic, it was still The Woken for a long time. I made the switch at one point because yeah, it became clear that that word had been assimilated.
What a better
So
name you ended up with, too. I have to be honest with you.
it took me a long time. I knew I had to change it, but I did not rush into it. And when I found the word Lucent, I was just, there was no question. It's an archaic word. It sounds like lucid, so it has that connotation.
Oh, yeah.
It means to shine, to glow. And you guys don't know this yet because we haven't gotten to it in the story, but that is going to be, it's going to play a real role in the whole, like, it just worked on so many levels. It looked cool. As soon as I found out that that was a word and what it meant, I rushed to my computer and made a logo. And it's like, it works. And it was done. And I just needed the right opportunity. And Webtoon at the time had a promotion on where you could enter your comic to be featured, but it had to be a new comic. But nowhere in the rules did it say you couldn't just re-upload an existing comic new. So that's what everyone was doing. I did the same, and I took that opportunity to re-upload it and start again as the Lucent. And lucky I did, because the first Webtoon was okay-ish popular, but when it came out, when it was the Lucent, that's when it really took off. That's when I got like 25,000 followers.
Yeah, it's honestly, not to beat a dead horse, but that is a comparatively clunky title for a book that, and I know it's gone through revisions and we're going to talk about this kind of stuff, but it's the project is, I don't know, it almost kind of has this, and I hopefully this isn't an offensive comparison, but it almost has this sort of Christopher Nolan quality to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm trying to think of the most horrible word I could find in a thesaurus for Inception. And I feel like that's what the Wokent is for the Lucent. It's like, beginning stuff and,
it's on the nose. It's clunky. But Shant, if you had have read the first things I ever wrote for this story, I mean, it's worse than the first drawings I ever did. I did not come into this fully formed. Just like everything I do, you jump in, you get to work, you do the work, and then you improve as you go, because we're not getting any younger. We can't be sitting around waiting until I'm a Dalkion artist and Alan Moore, Frank Miller level writer. You have to start somewhere. So I wrote from 2008 to 2015, I think. Almost every day, pretty much every day, I was writing the story. I was hashing it out. I would write it. I would rewrite it. It wouldn't work. I realized, I don't actually know how to write a story. So then I would go and learn, how do you actually write a story? What do you have to do? The structure of it.
How do you account for your lack of discipline, though, is what I'm trying to get to. No. So it's just for anybody who is interested in how to become an overnight success. For how many years were you writing every single day? And I'm assuming it was all you were doing. You didn't have another job. You were just...
No, I did have another job.
That's what I assumed.
I would get up early and I would write. And then I would take an hour lunch break and I'd go sit in my car and write. And then when I came home, I would write. And, then I'd read it and it was terrible. And... but you just plug at it, because I felt the story. I knew there was a story in there, but it was locked. It was behind, like Michelangelo when he gets his big block of thing. He could see it in there. But if you don't have the tools and the knowledge to get in there, how are you going to get David out of that big block of stone? So that's what I had to do. And I knew the only way I could do it, that's what I'd read. The only way you can really do it is to do it. So I would...
Like a story archaeologist is what I feel like your stuff has, that element to it. You know, like you're
Yeah, well, that's a
unearthing
lot about my interest and my methodology. You're right. I'm a pretty methodical. Is that a word?
methodical.
A
I don't know.
methodical, yes. About how I approach things. That was the same with everything. Develop a system, apply the system, make adjustments as you go. Aldous asked, how do you learn to write a story? Well, you write, and then you need to see how terrible your writing is and be objective about that. And then it's the same way I do with everything. You go stand on the shoulders of giants, you read their stuff voraciously, like hundreds of books in the same similar genre that I was sort of trying to get into and see how they did it. And then there's mountains of literature out there that you can read and learn and start applying. That's the important thing. You've got to apply it. So you read it and then you apply it, and then gradually you notice, oh, this is a little bit better than it was before.
Yeah.
And you just keep going.
So here's a question I have for you too. Where were you in this webtoon comic thing? How long had you known, or how long had you been with your wife at that point? Well, like, was this a left field
I remember
thing?
the day. When I decided to write the story. So it had this premise, and I won't vocalize the premise because that's kind of a key to the mystery. But I had this premise in my head forever. And when The Matrix came out, I thought, that's interesting. It's not the same premise, but it's similar. It's similar enough that it really inspired me to take it seriously. I was like, because it was something like that. You're not a writer. You don't really think you can do it. Sometimes you have to see how someone else do it. So that really worked. So maybe I can take my premise and run with it in a similar way. So if everyone who says, yeah, it reminds them of The Matrix, absolutely. The Matrix is like hardwired, baked into the very origins of this story. And so I had that idea, and that was always circling in my mind. And then, funnily enough, my sister made me read Twilight. This is a funny story. My sister, who was like, I don't know, 12, 13, I don't know how old she was. Yeah. She's like, this is the best book ever. And mind you, at that time, I was reading voraciously. I was reading like Asimov and Ursula. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. So I was like, okay, I'll read this. So I read Twilight. I was like, okay, this is some pretty trashy stuff. But look, it grabbed you and holds you. I understand why it became a worldwide phenomenon. But what I thought was, I mean, this is not polished writing. This is not Shakespeare. And this has become a big hit. And then I thought, I could write this. If she can write that and become famous, why am I not writing my story? Where if like this housewife has done it, like that's.
Let me say something to everybody in the chat right now. If I had Twilight money, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you people. All right, I would have a dog sled in the summer going down Main Street. I wouldn't. But no, it's funny because Todd McFarlane said the same thing about when he was trying to break into comics. He actually said he didn't look at the great guys. He said he looked at the people who were working and who had regular jobs and weren't in the top tier. And he goes, I would say, because I could do that, and that was something to shoot for that I thought was attainable. And I really do think that, to me, when students ask me about, oh, have you read that back when I was teaching? They go, what is it? Sorry, what about? I meant y'all people. But this is
y'all
people. How dare you, sir, Mr. Hoffa? But I think that what's interesting to me though, and this is the thing when you said there's a lot of stuff like The Matrix. Look, I've looked at this book of yours. I know of this Matrix that you speak of. Here's the thing I got to figure out. So there's this webcomic thing. You remember where you were? We were talking about where you were when you came up with this
I was
idea.
with Mel. That was the point that I was trying to get to. I was with Mel. We were walking. I was very quiet, and she's like, "What's up?" And I said, "I want to write a story."
Yeah.
And she's used to me by now. We'd been together
I love the
5
way you
years at
said
that point.
that. Go ahead.
No, she's like,
I know.
she's already gone through. I want to do my t-shirt company. I want to do screen printing. I want to
Yeah.
play poker. I want to have a magazine. All these things that I did. So she was like, all right. And I was sort of just started rambling. And, from that day on, it's been inside me. It's something that I've been carrying. And that was probably, 2008 or something like that. The
So
web,
you guys have been
the
together for a bit.
webtoon.
So
Oh, yeah, we've been together since 2003.
nice.
Well
done, by the way.
When you thank you. I was a lot thinner back then.
Well,
I
definitely
I snagged her up and imported her over.
That's
But the web comic didn't come around until 2015.
Yeah.
And that happened because I was in France on, just on a trip to be, she's with her family and I'm there. And we were walking through a supermarket, and in the French supermarkets, they have bande dessinée just everywhere. There's the shampoo, there's the bande dessinée. It was right there. And, I'd sort of been keeping up with comics a little bit, but not really. I was reading a bit of Star Wars, a little bit of, I'd buy the odd X-Men omnibus. But it was all stuff that I'd seen before. It was all, I remember that. Oh, yeah, that's what a comic book looks like. I used to be into that. I'll read it. That's cool. I picked up these French stuff, and it was like, if someone could film it, the wind in my hair and just the light shining down on me, I was just, comics can look like this, but this is what my story looks like in my head.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen it before. And, from that moment on, I was hooked. And it started. It was like, do you remember my story? Book? Yeah, it's hang on a sec. Is this one?
Oh wow, not bad. Beautiful.
Hang on, I've got my I've got dive cam.
I've
got dive cam set up. Let's see if I can get dive cam going. I don't know if this is going to work. I've never done it.
Let's give it a shot.
On
Okay, here we go.
Hang on, I've got to mute this. There we go. So this is Prophet by
hold on. There we go.
Mathieu Lafray, which is no doubt blundered. But he is a concept artist, and this is the exact book I picked up that time in the shop. And I opened it to this. I was like, okay, all right, a bit of a book here.
Wow.
Looks pretty cool. And I was like, oh, this is like, immediately you notice the size of the art, the size of the page. I was like, wow, this is, this is a different style of drawing. And then I just turned this page and I was like, what is this? And I was just, I was just awestruck. And because this is how I sort of see things in my head. And I started flicking through the pages.
Oh my, look at that, beautiful.
Let me see if I can angle this up a bit. There we go. Nope, that's too much. A little bit down. There's a page in here where a ship crashes in there. Just like, look at this.
Oh my God, look at the scope.
Exactly, the scale of it. This massive ship coming in. At this time that I picked this up, I'd been doing t-shirts for Threadless for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So I was getting pretty decent with my art, but I hadn't drawn comic book style since I was 14. But I saw this stuff and I just thought, I think I have to do this. This is my story. This is the format that it's in. And I went back and it was really incredible because I took these, long sort of novel-like passages that I had, and I just started pulling out single sentences and putting them into what is essentially, you get a much more condensed story in terms of actual dialogue, and it worked. I was like, it's actually working. It's making more sense. The pacing is so much more what I was thinking. So from that down, and that happened, I think, in about 2014. I was
So
like,
how old
I'm gonna
would
make
you have been in
I'm gonna make a
2014?
comic. I was
Do you remember? I can't remember how old.
I was 34.
You were 34. See, this is the thing that there's this thing that we talk about in, when we're like, there's this term that we use when we're trying to explain these things in an educational environment. And one of the things that took me forever to learn, because I didn't get it really in the educational environment, was the difference between influences and parent artists. Parent artists are people you see oftentimes later. They're not people you're like a crazy fan of, but they're people who open a door to you, to how to think about your work. And you go, I'm not this, but this gets me, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to, it's not like, oh, I want to draw like Todd McFarlane. It's like you meet somebody who has some understanding of what the hell you're trying to say. And this is like really fascinating. I'm sure you've shown this before on streams, but I haven't seen this yet. And gosh, Dan, Lawless,
this is the first BD I ever bought. It sat next to me for 2 years when I first started drawing comic stuff.
Yeah,
it was sort of my Bible. Exactly the same what you just said. So I'm not looking to copy it.
Yeah,
I'm looking to learn from it. Like you said, it was a teacher in a way.
Yeah.
How does he do that? Because every single thing I had to learn from scratch. So I didn't only start with this. I started with Proco, which is a YouTuber who teaches you how to draw like fundamental stuff. So you learn about the Loomis method and everything like that. But I thought, I'm just going to jump into this. And the very first comic book panel that I ever drew, in all seriousness, was this one.
Wow.
There. So that was sort of my entry level, was this guy.
And look at that.
This panel used to actually be separated back when it was a webcomic, but it was this guy. And then I did this second, and you might be able to notice, like, I'd go back to this book and say, all right, so how does this guy, I think there's a scene later on in the book, if I just shuffle forward somewhere. Oh no, it's at the start. It's at the start because it's from a previous book. So look, how does he do craggy rocks? How does it look? Is it tight? Is it loose? Whatever it is. So I look at that and I go, all right, well, I'll try and do something similar. And that's what I ended up with. Just kind of free-handing it, just whatever.
It's funny how you explain your art. It's still a source of you're like, so I just sort of did that. Somewhere someone's watching this going.
Of course. Understand. I took to drawing very quickly, always. And then I never really let it slide completely. I'm not saying I did it all the time, but I was doing something. And at this point, I'd been competing in t-shirt competitions, which did include some drawing, for about 4 years in Threadless, which is the biggest t-shirt competition website around. And I was consistently winning competitions. So I felt like I was really in a position where I could have, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had the confidence to jump into this. I wouldn't have been as crazy to think that I could do this. But I mean, this book I drew in order. So this is the first page I drew ever. This is the second page I ever drew. This is the third page I ever drew of a comic. Jeez. Fourth, fifth, and on and on we go. And I think you can sort of see progressively the techniques learned, improvements made, and that's all I do. So okay, this worked well, I'll continue doing that. I'll continue developing that. This didn't work so well, I'll try and find another way. It took me a long time to figure out how to draw the folds of fabric. A long time. You can't because you can't copy, so you can't just go, okay, where's the scene where he's drawn some fabric. Well, what if your character isn't in that position?
Yeah.
Your character's in a different position. What are you going to do? You have to sort of apply the principles. It's a learning curve, but yeah, that's what I did. So that was me in 2015, 2016. That's where I was. That was my headspace. I was putting out a webtoon. It was on Tapas and webtoon. Slowly building readership and finally getting that story that had been brewing since 2008 onto paper. But luckily, when you have that long to do it, you can plan it out. You can really sort of, a lot of people have said that the Lucent is very dense. I had many, many years to build that density from the ground up.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? When I was thinking about your stuff, and I was thinking about the kind of the funniest thing about comics, the funniest thing about doing work we do, particularly at the age we are, and people will say like, so are you just now like getting into this? So is this, and I'm like going, there's nobody who can do this work at any kind of professional or respectable level who's just getting into it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like it takes years to get to the point to where,
yeah.
And I think, if you want to think about, for me, that book, which is one of my absolute favorite, I do have to go to CG now and get a second copy because I have broken my own rules and opened it too many times. But when you look at that book and why it's so good and why it's so successful, you were hitting, there's our preview, right? There's our preview of Pain and Death. You look at how that book has evolved and, hearing all about that stuff, this truly was, Comicsgate truly was where preparation meets opportunity. It was,
exactly.
The real definition of luck. It was not, not.
I had, no, you're exactly right. And here's what happened with me. Here's my CG origin story. So I'm making a webtoon. I'm hanging around webtoon people. There's some great people in webcomics.
They prefer to be called people of webtoon. Go on. People
of webtoon. They do, actually. There's some great people in webcomics, but they are like what I imagined you were like in academia.
Yes.
Keeping their mouth shut, keeping their head down, because it is completely...
I did my best, man, but
it's completely overrun.
Yes.
With all of the woke BS, and it just got worse and worse and worse as the years went on. It started out like, we're going to do visible women in comics so that women can be seen who are creating comics. And I was like, what? You're all women. What are you talking? I knew one guy the whole time, and I actually checked the stats, and like, what are the webcomic stats?
Oh God, you didn't do that 80, right. The stats are a tool of the patriarchy. I was told that by students.
84% female, 11% non-binary, and the rest male.
Yeah,
and you can imagine what kind of men they are for the most part. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're in web comics. You don't even have to show what gender you are. Like, I coming into this, I have zero power. I have zero prestige. My manhood doesn't get me anything. In fact, it hurts me because I'm seen as some oppressor by you guys. So I don't know why. So all these people are sharing, and I'm like, I can't participate in this because I let people know that I'm a guy. And I just thought, well, that's BS. And then, you're hanging on the forums, and some guy is really, some new guy comes in, he's super pumped. He wants to start a comic, and he starts sharing his stuff, and all these people like, oh, you're objectifying women, and you're drawing a black woman. Are you black? Are you black? You're drawing a black woman. You're sexually objectifying her. And it's like, it's my wife. She's modeling for me as reference.
Yep.
And I was like, and they just went after this guy and just drove him away. And it's like, having been part of things, I'm going to talk rollerblading here, having been part of something that became unpopular, and it became very hard to get new people to come in and get involved. Never turn someone away who's new. Never. You don't know how amazing that is to have someone who wants to come and take part in whatever you're doing and contribute. And they just like throw these people away because they weren't woke. And I was like, this is just, I love telling my story. My readers were awesome. Very occasionally I'd get a comment like, oh, I'm so happy you're having representation in your book. I'm like, that's not why I'm doing it, but whatever. Thank you. Almost all of them, 99.9% of them were just amazing. I missed that. I really do, because it was a weekly interaction where I would put out weekly content. They would read it. They'd put out their theories, and it was great. Web comics is great for that. But it was just the environment. And, this was 2015, 2016, leading into 2017, that I just thought, well, that's life now. That's the internet. It's woke. If I want to be among my people, I just have to go hang out in the chats in YouTube. And that's where I was. That's what I would do. I was in chats of Medica and Gamergate and all that sort of stuff. They were my people. But that was completely separate from what I was doing in the comics. So when I found your boy Zach, and I saw, holy crap, there's my people actually that are interested in comic books. I was hooked from day one. Like, that was it. I got Zach all day, every day. I started listening to everything he'd put out previously, and once I'd caught up with that, because I don't know how long he'd been doing it at that point. I don't know if it was too long, but and then from then it was, he was putting out 3 or 4 videos a day. And then you start thinking, this is what you said, like opportunity. Then you start thinking, well, can I get involved in this? But luckily I didn't. And I could have done a Critias and jumped in without checking the depth of the water first. But luckily I held back, and I just hung out in the chat, and I got to know people. And I started my Twitter. I just cleansed it, and I did a brutal unfollowing of anyone with pronouns in their bios and weird symbols and all that sort of stuff. And I was just like, I don't need you guys anymore. I'm done. And I started following all the Comicsgate people, all the people that I knew from your boy Zach's comment section.
It's sad.
And that was in 2017.
But you do. I did this very similar thing. I was just basically, I can't be around people who want to police every single thing, and I'm not going to think about that at all. And it's a big deal,
And you're constantly walking on eggshells. I can remember, there's a scene here.
Yeah.
Let's open it up. I can remember, and I feel so bad admitting this. And I feel so bad that there's other people out there who are probably feeling the same way. But basically, a big intro to the main character, Ella. The whole thing is, this is her whole story arc that'll be continued on throughout the books and in Fractured Mind and everything, is that she's standing on a ledge, and she's walking in 2 different worlds, and that's represented in her dream life and in her real life, and the differences you see there. She's seeking for importance, but she knows what it kind of takes to do that, and she's umming and ahhing. Sort of that's just how you start her character. So now I wanted to have this big grand entrance, and then on this page, then she just steps backwards into the void. And that's another theme that continues on throughout the series. And I remember thinking, am I going to get flack for not sensationalizing, margin, whatever it is, like not taking suicide seriously by putting it in my story, because people would think, oh, she's committing suicide, and I had a friend who committed suicide, and how dare you put it. Like, I remember thinking that, And you know, I was like, well, I can't change it. This is like a key moment and a key entrance for another character and everything. But I was like, I can't tell my story in this mindset. I can't
Yeah.
I can't have you all out there and you're judging being in my head and in the story. Otherwise, I'm not really telling the story as it needs to be told. So
Yeah, the self
I,
censorship. I mean, that is
exactly.
the thing that people. This is the crazy thing, you know, and this is where you and I overlap. Very. I mean, there's so many strange things. I'm the more I talk to people in Comicsgate, the more I'm a little terrified of some of the overlap. I'm still waiting to find out that I'm, you know, Dan Lawless is somehow, you know, a few years younger, you know, Indian twin. I don't know. I don't know how it works out, but the parallels get terrifying. Like, you
Our
know,
grandmothers were separated. They separated twins at birth, and one went to India and one went to Australia. And that's what's
exactly. That's
happening here.
right. Exactly. That's right. But it's one of those things where I look at this stuff and I go, I basically, you know, was realizing I cannot say, you know, any of the things, you know, that I want to say. And
Mhm.
that's a crazy thing. Like I started looking back at my life and saying, you know, I can't paint an attractive woman without, this is something I actually said as a teacher. I go, if you're a man and you paint a beautiful, sexy woman, people come after you. And now it's like if you know are an interracial couple or whatever in art. I mean, it's almost like going back to the dark days of segregation. But
That's so weird.
they come after you for doing that. But if you're a guy and you paint, or you know, two guys or two girls, you're doing God knows what, as they're starting to talk about the animation now. Hey, maybe these are really unhealthy relationships. You get applauded for it. And I went, what I did is so much less exploitive than what's happening over here. And you see the double standards and you go, wait a second. You mean I can't paint feminine sexiness or beauty? You mean I can't deal with death? I mean, would these people let George Carlin, Richard Pryor, hell, even Guillermo del Toro make their work in their little world? No, it's the strangest thing, man. And I think it's so funny with the second you said, and I, of course, thinking of the book, I've got those panels in my head. But when you were showing them, I thought, oh, I know what you're going to say. I was worried about telling a dramatic, showing a dramatic moment in my story for fear someone not interested in reading what it's actually about would just snap judge it based on some standard visuals. It's crazy. I left
It
the
is
word out.
crazy. And thankfully no one ever said anything.
Yeah.
So I just thought, all right, this is happening inside my head. But I mean the self-censorship, that's where it happens.
Yeah.
And you cannot let it creep in, get even a toehold inside your, you know, story factory, because it's, yeah, it'll completely undermine everything you're trying to do and your vision and all that sort of stuff. So when CG happened and CG started taking off, I mean, that was just, I knew it. I
Oxygen.
was like, I am all in. And I can remember being worried a little bit
Yeah.
when I put that Comicsgate hashtag
Yeah, it's scary.
in my Twitter bio, because I know that there are like SJW minded guys and that I was sort of friendly with. And I thought, you know, but then I thought, look, I've been hanging out on Medica streams and like shit like that, like real dank stuff. Why am I worried about these tosspots who spend all day selling their comics diversity points?
Yeah.
You know, that's how they do it. They're like, they don't say I'm the writer of a mystery thriller, you know, inspired by that. They say I'm a black disabled, you know, Muslim writer drawing of this. And I always found that pathetic. I was like, why am I caring about that today? So I said, screw it. I unfollowed them all. I started, you know, putting the hashtag Comicsgate in there and never looked back. You know, obviously, and every now and then I would go back and I'd just like find all the people that I'm following who have had unfollowed me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, see ya. Bye every single time. Don't need
Yeah.
you. Never look back. Funnily enough, there was only one guy in there, maybe more than one, but the one that I remember that didn't unfollow me,
Mhm.
and that was Rob Arnold. And when I went back, I was like, I went all the way back to the beginning, and one of the first guys I ever followed, and he followed me back way back in 2015, was Rob. And
So
we didn't know each
unfortunate.
other. And
No, I'm kidding. No, but
we
I
didn't
mean,
know each other, and we didn't
so
connect until 4 years later.
so
This
you
is funny.
guys have kind of, I guess, known about each other for how long? When was that? How far back does that take you
That was
guys?
2015. Yeah, he was doing
Wow.
his Kickstarters, but he was way more ahead of me at that point. He was actually making something. I'd probably just had, a few episodes of a webtoon
Yeah.
out, which is, could have been 20 or 40 panels or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to me when I look at the stuff that you do, and I'm looking at the work that you do, and I think, for me, I kind of did a similar thing with my art books. Comicsgate was happening, and I was listening to all the streams, I was watching all the stuff, and I thought, man, I've got to make sure that, like, I want to do something, but I was seeing there was a lot of, things were getting big, people were getting a lot of attention, and everything was really crazy, and I said, I'm going to do these 2 art books so that when I walk in there, I've got something under my belt. Like I've done comics, I've worked in comics before, but it's not the same thing. And so I made a conscious decision, which was, it's scary. I didn't know anybody that was around me at that time who'd ever launched anything on Indiegogo. Indiegogo was not the place to launch something, but I launched my first 2 art books on Indiegogo because of what happened to your boy Zach and Malin. And I tell people that all the time because I go, so I actually did the weirdest thing. I launched I think I had at that point maybe 15, 20,000 followers at that point on Instagram, but I launched on Indiegogo, and I was thinking, I'm not even using the hashtag Comicsgate, like, because it's an art book. I'm like, if I say Comicsgate, people are going to get this thing. There's no comics in it. It's just artwork.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in this bizarre middle ground, and I had done, some Red Rooster, fan art, and people knew. I'd talked to friends of mine. I was like, this Ethan guy's amazing. And I was amazed at some of the psycho responses I got. But the thing about it was that I saw I could make money. And that sort of, in some ways, seeing those 2 books fund almost launched less than almost a year apart, it's fulfilling and then doing the next book. I kind of saw my worth as an artist there. And then I was like, book 3 has to be a CG comic. And at that point, things were, when I was gearing up for Nosfero, I wouldn't say things had calmed down, but things were kind of in that middle phase, when I was gearing up to do that. And so it was, I mean, I've learned so much in 6 months from you as a result of coming in here, but I've been watching all the streams. It's not something I like the way you put it. You go, I was the kind of person where it's like, I want to understand this before I jump in.
Yeah, and for me it was I very much, look, from day one I wanted to be a part of this. You never know exactly how that's going to pan out, because you don't know if anyone's going to like what you're doing. You don't know if anyone's going to like you don't know if you're going to be any good at any of this. So but I knew I wanted to be a part of it. But no, I didn't. I wasn't in a place. I could see, people were taking advantage of that Big Bang phase and just the raw energy and power surrounding Comicsgate at that time.
That's crazy.
It was very much still within the movement era, where people would back you just to support Comicsgate. And obviously that wasn't going to last, and it petered off, and then it sort of ended up heading into the more Comicsgate sort of finding out who it is phase, and the pivot away from trying to improve mainstream books to we're going out on our own with our own side industry, and then that the rocky beginnings of that onto and that's led to where we are now, where it's a sort of self-sustaining, slowly growing side industry. by itself, and it was a long road to get there. I didn't want to jump in and screw it up by, well, like I said,
I thought the
start
same.
show.
I thought the
It's
exact
about
same thing
temperament.
about getting in. I go, I don't want to be this guy that comes in and I was like, I knew I could pump out a lot of work. I knew I could go through the printing and publishing. I do not want to come into this place, fall flat on my face, and be a negative story for Comicsgate. Like, that went through my head.
Yeah.
I don't know if that went through your head.
No,
but it
absolutely,
absolutely went through
because
mine.
we're talking 2017. I've got, I'd probably had 2,500 people followed who were webtoon pronoun people. They weren't going to support me.
Yeah.
They don't have any money.
Yeah.
I know, because I talked to them and they're all poor. I'm followed by 150 people, mostly webtoon people. So I've got the ratio of followers to follows is, I mean, I made every mistake in the book. So, I got 160 followers. I'm mucking it up with Comicsgate on Twitter, but I'm just an account. I'm not, I didn't have my name on it. I'm an avatar. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Hey guys, back my Comicsgate book. No, I needed time. And, we had those guys. Your boy Zach would say, just come hang out in the chat. He was the first person to say that. I don't know if people remember that. He was the first person to say, go hang out in the chat and get to know people. So I listened to that. And I listened to John when he said, build your audience. So when I made the decision that, yes, I'm going ahead, I want to go Comicsgate, I want to print a printed version of my book, I knew the work that would be involved in. Well, I thought I knew the work because it was in webcomic format. It needed to go into printed format. I had all that ahead of me, but I had to start the channel. Well, John said, build your audience, start your channel. That's what I did. I was dropping. Victoria had probably just had Clark at that point, so she couldn't drive Victoria to school or anything like that. So I was driving Victoria to and from school. She goes to a special French school, so we have to it's like 40 minutes to an hour in the morning. So I'd drive her in, and on the way back I would listen to your boy Zach, or I would record a video of me commenting on something that was happening in Comicsgate. It could have been the Quartering, or I don't know, whatever,
Narwhal.
Sean Gordon Murphy, or Narwhal, or Doug Tenaple, or whatever it was at the time. And I would record videos on my way to work. So I'd have it on my phone, and then in my lunch hour, I'd edit that and release it.
This is the craziest thing for me, because this is how new knowing you is. When I was editing Narwhal's trailer and putting the music into it and upping everybody's voices for his Earthbound 2, I didn't know you at that point.
Yeah. Wow.
It's that recent. Like, I had been editing videos for Ethan, and when I came on your stream the first time, you had no idea
quickly in Comicsgate. Yeah.
that I've been doing all that stuff. Like, that's
I said, oh, he does videos. Okay, cool. All right, let's get on. What
Yeah.
you do those videos? What?
Yeah, it was crazy, man. And it's such a crazy thing to me to look at this stuff, because first of all, I want to go back to something you just said. You go, I mean, I had a lot to do. This had to be, in a comic book format, this webtoon stuff. So wait, first let me go to webtoon. How much did your experience with that platform affect your caution in going into Comicsgate, in the sense that you had seen something that was an opportunity, it had opened up, and then all of a sudden these people, obviously it seemed less likely SJWs were going to swarm into Comicsgate as they were busy ostracizing people. But it's almost like, this is what I ran into with Instagram. Here's the promise of the premise. Here's how we work. Whoops, Facebook bought us. Now we're going to bury things. Now we're going to turn it into, so that, people can follow you, but they don't even see your stuff. They can just friend you and all that stuff. And I went,
Webtoon is a private company, and it's based on a Korean version of the same thing. That's I mean, Webtoon is massive. The Korean version, I think, is magnitudes bigger. If you can imagine, they're already buying crazy amounts of manga. Can you imagine how much they're reading for free online? So it's the American version of that. It's a company called Naver. And but look, I've got nothing bad to say about Webtoon. It's
no. I mean,
the stories on there are what the people who visit there the most read. It's not my thing. I think most of it is terrible. There are some gems in there.
But monetarily,
I found
it
an
can't be a
audience
lot.
there. I found what's that?
I said I was just thinking. Well, sorry. Go ahead. Finish what you were saying. You
I was
found
saying
your
I
audience.
found
there.
an audience there, and
Yep.
they actually supported me. They actually promoted me quite a number of times, and that's how I ended up getting up to 25,000 readers. And look, that kept me going. I'm not going to lie. Those, because when you start out, it's so demoralizing. You put in a month of work and you put it online and no one sees it. You got no Twitter. Your Twitter followers don't care because they don't even see you. No one's looking at you on web. It is absolutely demoralizing, and you just have to plow through those. It's almost like a point of depression because you're expending all this energy and getting nothing in return for it. But gradually, slowly, bit by bit, you start getting a few more people, and then I started getting promoted, and then by the time I left Webtoon to go Comicsgate, it was amazing, and it was a big decision, but I knew I had to do it because this is where my people were, and this is where I could see I could turn what I'm doing into something real. I could have continued on with Webtoon. I think it would have been I knew that the story isn't really the thing that would be super popular on that site, and the style I was doing was kind of too slow to keep up with the pace that they were used to. So I thought, no, I'll go crowdfunding. A bit of a gamble, but I believe in Comicsgate, and I think I can do this. So we'll see how we go. But it all seems like it was always going to work when you're there and you look back. But believe me, I struggled to get a couple of hundred sign-ups to the thing. I struggled to find somewhere to launch the book, a stream to go onto when the book was launched. And I can like it was yesterday. I can remember talking to Mel as I'm setting up the campaign, and she's saying, "So, what do you think it's going to do?" And I these are my words. I said, "If I can get to 100 backers, I can walk around Comicsgate holding my head up. I won't be a complete laughingstock." That's what I was expecting. So it's obviously it went so much better than that. But that was due to, in part, all the years that led up to that point, both in and out of Comicsgate, and building the story and everything and honing the craft.
Yeah. I mean, that was the other thing I was going to say when you said, now if I brought this book into Comicsgate, I was going to have to lay it out in a comic book format. And you said it had to be in a book format. Let me view that phrasing a different way. When I see the Lucent, it had to be in a book format. Like this was born to be from whenever you saw that first bande dessinée. It was, that had to be, because it's like I've got an edition of Miyazaki's Nausicaa. Now, he drew that at a bande dessinée scale, and he finally printed hardcovers of it at that scale. They're giant, but you can clearly tell he saw Mobius's work. He saw a lot of the giants of bande dessinée, and he wanted to do that kind of book. And the Lucent, to me, is, and I love European comics. I have, as you know, we've talked about it. The thing that I think is so big about European comics that you do so well is the settings and the backgrounds are such an important part of the story. They're living, breathing places. The sense of place is very unique to that art form, all the way going back to Hergé and Linclair and all of the stylistics of Hergé that then flow into Mobius and flow into, who's a very different artist. But you get those glorious, like, wide shots that establish the setting, almost like you're I think that's why they can do science fiction so well, if that makes sense. And so
Yeah.
for me, this is the thing I'm trying to get to, though, because when you're talking about the Matrix, you're talking about the Lucent, I've got to make sure I ask you about this. What makes the Lucent like nothing else I've ever seen is what the heck is Gilgamesh and that whole thing doing as an influence of that story? Because that's where you to me, you go into that Mobius, past, future, all connected thing.
The Matrix inspired me to do the Lucent. But the Lucent is the story that I want to tell, but doesn't exist yet.
There you go.
And it's, look, there's things that you are inspired by and you want to write about and include in your story. And that's the cool thing when you're writing your own story and you have in CG, we have no reins on us. We have no constraints. Yeah. And that's why I love comics. You can do whatever you want. And I think in comics, you should do things that are off the wall. I want you guys to know that the Lucent is weird. It's loopy. It's a little crazy, but it needs to be, it should be. And that, I guess that kind of sense, like when I read Sandman, it's like, this is off the wall, but I love it. That like I've never really been for comics that are just representing day-to-day life, unless it's war. I do like them, but then it's stylized war. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. The whole Gilgamesh thing is because when I started writing the story, this is going to bend your mind a little bit. So Damon was Ella. Okay. My main character was Damon, but it wasn't Damon as you saw him here or here. He was like Ella. And he was the one who had this strange ability that hadn't really been developed, and he was learning about some weird things. And there was another guy who was kind of showing him stuff.
Yeah.
But then he also had a love interest who was a redhead. I couldn't get it to work. It was just, there was beginner writing convolution. It wasn't clean. It wasn't neat. And at some point, I don't know how, I don't know where, I thought I need to get rid of one of these guys. It's not working. Every time I try and find a way through, it crashes. So I ended up retooling it. Ella becomes the main character. It wasn't because I wanted to have a female main character or anything like that. It was just purely to serve the story. Damon became that other character, and then, man, everything started to click. And the point I'm saying this is, I started with the characters. I started with the characters in a situation, in a premise that I had as the sort of omnipotent controller of this universe placed onto them. But every time I tried to write, and this is what happened over those many years, every time I tried to write, it didn't work. It fell flat. There were plot holes. I'd run into brick walls. And I've slowly realized that was because I hadn't built a world for them to live in.
Yeah.
So I put them to the side. I put them on a shelf, and I started building the world, the history of the world, all the way back 20,000, 30,000 years. Obviously not.
So wait a second. I got to talk about this. So you haven't figured out that, you have figured this out. I'm saying this in jest, but the art, comic, women culture of Europe clearly was something destined to inform your life, because everything you say and when I think about where your wife is from, I think about the comic that was like, this means something. It's almost like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But then when you're saying, I realized I have to build the world. Now, gotta be honest with you. when I try to write a story that way, I can't do it. I was the king before all of this, of building the world and then not knowing who the people were. And so it's so fascinating to hear that. But my God, man, if anyone in comics, I feel like there's hail Leonard McCoy. My God, man, if anybody in Comicsgate, if there's I would say there's two people to me in Comicsgate who most distill what I think of as the bande dessinée European style on completely opposite ends of the spectrum within that, which is you and Narwhal, interestingly enough. Because there's a setting quality that drives his stuff, not stylistically, not art-wise, but in terms of if you were to, look at the full range of what that stuff is. But with you, I think it's even more so. It's amazing to me.
Once that world started taking shape, and I built that out, the timeline, and the real the timeline gets much clearer at the start of this book. So what are we talking? 3800 BC. It starts becoming much clearer. There's events that take place before that, absolutely, that influence what's happening in this book.
Yeah,
but those connections, well, just like history, it gets watered down. It affects fewer and fewer people. These events affect us all, and but once I had that, all I had to do was see where the characters that I already had, they were sitting on the shelf ready to go. How do they fit into this world? Where do they fit? And I've said this. I've likened it to the Star Wars universe in that you could tell Lucas had a vision of the galaxy of Star Wars, and it was a grand vision. And there was, a timeline before it with the Jedi and the Sith and whatever it was. But he chose to tell a story about some very important people in that timeline, namely Anakin and Luke Skywalker.
Yep.
And that's what I'm doing as well. So I've got this universe. It's grand. It's massive. It goes all the way back to Gilgamesh. It goes further back than that. It involves we're going to see some Akkadians. We're going to see some ancient Romans. We're going to see Turks and all this. They're going to come into it. Yes.
But I have to ask, though, why? Because there's a lot of places you could go. You could have gone and stopped or settled on and been focused on Beowulf. That's the thing that I think is, and you could say, well, we'll get there, but why Gilgamesh? That's the thing that kind of, it's a really fascinating.
Gilgamesh is the first story. So if we're going to talk Gilgamesh, hold on a sec. Gilgamesh is the first story.
Yeah, there we go. Let's have it.
Do it.
Bring the thunder. Boom.
Gilgamesh is the first story. Oh man, Glenat.
I think I could be wrong.
This is, you're gonna freak when I open this. You're gonna freak.
I am. I'm preparing.
And as soon as I became aware of Gilgamesh, instantly, I noticed similarities. I noticed thematic similarities. His by himself is an incredibly intriguing character, but it's and his basically in Painted Death begins with I think it's 12 or 16 page, sort of a short story, but you guys are going to find out, just like how Waking Dream started out with this little intro. Every Lucent book starts out with something like this. It sets up themes. It involves a ongoing character, and that's the mystery of where is that character now, because you get to learn that he's immortal. Gilgamesh was the first man in history to go seek out an immortal to find eternal life. All of this stuff is involved, is thematically important to the Lucent. So I just thought, what a perfect character to bring in to my world, and have him show up, because much like Ella, he leaves his where he's from to go out on a journey. I mean, we've heard the hero's journey a lot. I mean, there's certain things you can take and certain things you can't. But look, I love the time period. I'm fascinated with that place, the sort of cradle of civilization. That's very important to the Lucent as well. If we open onto the, this page here, here's a guy. You can't really see him, mate, and I can't zoom in because I don't have autofocus on. Here's a guy sitting at a, sort of altar-like desk. He's got tablets. He's got that old, stone computer thing. He's got a model of a ziggurat here. This is a guy in 3800 BC, thinking about civilization, dreaming of building something.
I feel like you're just about to drop a spoiler. It's so hard.
No.
No, I'm joking. No, I'm just laughing because listen, there's this guy who's I think if there's one thing that murders artwork, it's people trying to create using auteur theory as opposed to leaving that to some critic down the road. But it's really funny to hear you describe this character. And I'm like, so this guy, right, who's thinking about civilization, right? And he's thinking, this is phenomenal. He's looking
phenomenal.
Yeah, I can't do your accent. I can do Rob's accent, but I can't do yours. Yours is too tricky.
Well, mine's more a bit highfalutin, Let me open this book that I just received
Please.
the other day.
I know this is a tease. You gotta open it. Holy
talk
cow.
about scale. Check this out.
Yeah.
There's I'm guessing that's Uruk, and he's at the top of his ziggurat there.
Guys, check
the
this
way
out.
I like to envision it. And I'm taking a lot of liberties with my telling of Gilgamesh. A lot. I figure it's been long enough.
Too soon. Too soon, Michael.
Too soon?
Yeah,
I think it's been long enough that I can sort of take some liberties with the character. My working theory is that Uruk, where he's from, it becomes what it is because of his visit to Utnapishtim. That's the way I'm interpreting it. It's, it has, I don't know if it has any historical basis whatsoever, but I don't think anyone really knows what.
But there's going to be a lot of blowback in Comicsgate.
I know.
With the Gilgamesh purists who are going to just take you to task and say, "Are you from Uruk?" No. I mean, seriously,
the Urukans. Yeah.
You know what the best thing in the world that could come out of your project is if somebody decides to say, because of your book, I went and looked at Gilgamesh and you got some things wrong. That would be such an accomplishment. If you could inspire somebody, I mean that sincerely.
Trust me.
Check out these texts. I mean, it's inspired me to go back to them.
It is very loosely based on Gilgamesh's meeting with Utnapishtim in what is it? Dilmun. But it is there to serve my story. I don't know if you can see that. If anyone has a copy of Waking Dream, there is a Gilgamesh hidden here behind this clock that I put into. This is the sort of stuff I like to do.
I know.
I'm gonna tease you about what's gonna come into the future, but I'm gonna hide it in such an obscure. You would never pick that up unless you knew exactly who Gilgamesh was, and you happen to look at this part of the panel which isn't highlighted or whatever, and then you see in later books, oh look, Gilgamesh is in this story. That's quite funny. That's how I like to tell stories. But there he is. There, you can see him.
You guys have a fairly famous Gilgamesh statue, one of the most famous in Australia, right? I don't know exactly what campus it was on.
We do. I don't know.
Pretty sure. Yeah, there's one of.
I Google that.
Watch me be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's either on a campus, where it is. But there's one of the most famous Gilgamesh statues. If you look it up, is in Australia. I thought.
Australia.
Watch me be wrong. It'll turn out to be New Zealand. I'll have egg on my face.
Yeah, University of Sydney. Yeah, I've referenced this statue a lot. I had no idea that was in Sydney. I just knew it was a Gilgamesh.
You may have to
statue.
take a pilgrimage there. That's amazing.
Isn't that cool? I didn't know that.
That is a brilliant. So again, in prep for this discussion, I do a lot of drinking. No, I do. No, but when we were talking about Gilgamesh,
Sorry, one sec.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just dropped my friggin' earphone thing. Hold on a sec.
There you go.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine, man.
Technical difficulties.
But when I started doing the Gilgamesh painting that was inspired by our conversations, I was like, I need to use as reference for it because Michael's from Australia. I need to use this. When I found that statue, I go, I got to use that as reference as my kind of
used this. Remember when I was redrawing him to look more kingly, look more regal? I was referencing that statue as well. I didn't even know it was in Australia.
You didn't know that's awesome. Oh, that'll be so great to see.
Yeah,
we do absolutely. Someone just said it's a nice statue. We need one here, and I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have.
Look at the cock of the walk here, Gilgamesh.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But you can see, so much of this style of comic book informs me. The big half panel establishing shot. Maybe with a little bit of look, there's some people going in there and stuff like that. Man, this is beautiful stuff,
isn't it?
So here's Gilgamesh. I haven't read this yet. I'm it's always quite difficult to read because it's in French and a lot of the words I don't know.
My difficulty reading is all because it's in French.
I was speaking French. I picked Clark up earlier, and it's a French kindergarten, and I was talking French to him on the way home. He hates it. He was like, no, you speak English. I don't like your accent. God, look
critics
at
from an early age, right? That's what
I know.
Kids.
Yeah. Look at these backgrounds. You're exactly right. Like,
but I have to ask this. So when you're doing your layouts for this, when you're putting together, so you're going to make me open the damn thing now. It's. I
can open it and you can just reference it.
No. I want you to keep it there. We got two cameras here, so it seems a little bit, ridiculous to not have two people at work here. But this is the thing, and I'm going to order another copy. It's going to happen, so don't worry about it. I shall be getting.
CGnow.net.
I know, CGnow.net.
Did you hear that Ethan was talking about CG Now the other night?
He should be.
Yeah, get over it. Just did a video. He forgot that I did it. This is what people I was saying about Ethan. Like people think busy. Ethan is like a Machiavellian type character who's
doesn't pick up his kid from school ever.
Pulling the strings of Comicsgate in all sorts of directions. But I think the guy just has so much on and much to manage that things come in and out of his memory all the time. And he's got to focus on Wreck Planet. He's got all these projects, his warehouse and everything. So he actually had commented on a CG Now video that I did saying, oh, this is great, Mike. Awesome stuff. But then, a week later, he'd forgotten that I was the one who did it. So that was quite funny. I'm going to steal the spotlight from you
just for a second. So when you were putting this book together, which now I believe is destined to become a hardcover, guys, look at the print quality on this. How exciting was it to you to imagine looking at your own work, that journey from when you saw your first bande dessinée book and said, a book that gets me, to make a book?
Oh, it was so long in the making.
I know,
so long. And I was just...
Well, then pause now to see, and I have an autographed copy, folks. That's how it works. Your first panel is
in print.
In the States, being prized and read by somebody. I gotta zoom this effing camera out. Oh, God. But, I mean, this is every bit the bande dessinée that you were looking at back in the day, saying, am I going to be able to do this? That is like saying, I saw Michael Jordan play, so I said to myself, this basketball thing, it's, you went out there and you hit it out of the park, man.
I don't know if it's quite Michael Jordan, but look.
If you're on the bench in the NBA, you're still absolutely amazing, and you're not on the bench, you're playing.
It's funny when I look back at this. I can remember drawing every single square centimeter of this book. Like if you want to point at any point on this book, I can remember drawing that bit. And like not necessarily what I was thinking, but what it was like to draw it. It's funny. I don't know why I can do that, but
well, it's because you're so you've got to be. I remember everything. Well, okay, I have a freakish memory, but it's like that panel right there. That is a panel I remember pausing on, and that is the sweet science of composition, of scale. That's what I fell in love with when I look at Kevin Nolan's work. I don't know if you like his stuff at all. But he's just an inker. He designed the logo for Hellboy on a lark. Like he's a genius, you know, and he understands how to place things in such a way that you get the maximum, you know, impact. There we go. You get the maximum.
All of this entire dream sequence, I have done personally.
Yeah.
I have practiced in when I was really avid lucid dreamer, all this stuff. And you know, you could do a whole book trying to get really in detail about how it works. And I wanted to capture that feeling because I know that there's a lot of people who haven't experienced that for themselves, who don't know what it's like to experience jumping off the top of doing a running jump off the top of an 8-story building and rolling out of it in a lucid dream. Like this is really formative experiences in my life. And you know, I just knew I had to do something with that.
I didn't know about all that. That's awesome.
Oh man, when I first started, you know, shopping around the idea of this book, people would ask me, "What's this from?" And yeah, we got into the whole thing behind the lucid dreaming and all that sort of stuff. I would be so hardcore into it. It does sound like drug sumo. Lucid dreaming is drug-free hallucination on a scale that can literally change your life. I mean, the reason why this book exists right now is because I was so heavily into it back then. And that gets into the kind of premise that I don't really want to mention because it is part of the mystery. But all that stuff that you see in the book, I've done in a dream. And, you know, I try and represent it as best as I can on the page. Like you saying, that scale of her jumping off that building and, you know, trying to capture just how crazy it is to do it in a dream. And, you know, put that on a page. Yeah, it is satisfying to know that people out there, even if they don't understand.
I'm gonna keep flipping through it until I heard that. Because dude, this is awesome. This is awesome stuff. Like that's why we're here, you know. And I want to say this too, right? Is that it's funny when I hear people, we have very odd but very different experiences. I've had and these are not for people who think it's this, where you know how people go, I had a dream and then I woke up, but then I was still in a dream and all that kind of stuff, right? You know, people know that. Well, I've had these things that are very rare called false awakenings. False awakenings are not that. False awakenings, even after you wake up from them, are indistinguishable from reality. Like they're so real. You do not know, you are convinced. And I've had very few people have them, but they're like, I had 12 in a row once. It was horrible. It was like a nightmare.
I spent the thing. Yeah.
Rest
you
of the
spend
day
the morning trying to get out
waiting
of
to wake up.
Yeah.
And I tried to find things in my house that only could not be in the dream, but then in those, and I had 3 nights where I woke up from that, and I hope I never experience it again. It was so terrifying. I told my wife, I was like, honey, are you real? Tell me something that I don't know. Like,
see, I experienced that, and I was
horrifying.
like, I want more.
Yeah,
There's more behind this, because I was thinking, if my mind can recreate my house, and everything I touch, and the light coming in through the window, and my body, and everything in that exquisite detail, and people who haven't experienced this don't quite grasp just how clearly how much we're being literal here. You cannot distinguish
It's not
reality from
distinguishable.
dream. It is the same. So imagine that. Imagine that setting. You're in reality as far as you can ascertain it through your senses, right? And then you walk outside and say, I'm just going to go jump in front of that truck just to see what happens. Or I'm going to fly up into the sky to see if I can reach the moon and look like and see how high I can get and look down on Earth. Or I'm going to stick my hand through the mirror and see what's on the other side. This is what I was into for years. And it is literally drug-free hallucination. And you don't even, I don't know if you know this, Shaft, you don't even have to start from a sleeping state. You can do it from a completely wake state. It's called wake-induced lucid dreaming. That thing that I just said plays a role in the Lucent. That's part of it.
It better.
And basically, I became really good at it at one point. Instead of a meditation, I did it lying down. You'd lie down on a bed and slowly put your body to sleep while your mind stays awake. You will have the craziest hallucinations when you do that. And some of them are terrifying. It's like your brain doesn't want you to do it, so it tries to scare you, but you've got to kind of push through it. And but man, once you get into that dream state, fully conscious, it's wild in there. It is so wild. And that's where a lot of the stuff from the Lucent comes from. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's got to be crazy. It's got to be weird. It's got to be something that people aren't familiar with. To make it interesting, and that ties into the whole Lucent premise. And that's why I'm not bothered when people say I'm confused by the Lucent. I don't quite understand it. At this point in the story, you're not supposed to yet, but it's all done on purpose. The criticism I have of the Matrix is that it's a movie, and movies have to be able to work as a commercial movie, they need the 3-act structure. They need the audience to know what the deal is before the second act starts. So they give away everything first. They tell you the Matrix isn't real. They're all trying to get batteries or whatever it is, and we go in and out of it. So the mystery gets killed while the story's still being told. That's not what the Lucent is. I'm going to try and stretch this mystery out till the bitter end.
The Lucent rewards you for your attention.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have had, so when Painted Death comes out, you will have read maybe 30% more than anyone has ever read on Webtoon. So I got about 60% of the way through Painted Death before I cut off web comics altogether. Obviously, it's been remastered and reworked with Joe and everything and made better. But from that point, I've had at least 5 readers who figured it out just by going back and trawling through the panels, searching for little clues and all that sort of stuff. And they would send me emails and say, I've got it. And they would send me these detailed emails. I was like, damn it. But that's good.
Listen,
that's good.
Listen, I know it's good. And this is the other thing too, right? It's that thing in all forms of storytelling. It plays. Like, people are invested in this fictional story you're creating. And it's so funny, it's when I look at the stuff that you're doing, and that's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand in about Comicsgate that I love, and that's what art, used to be like, and comics and creativity used to be like. The stuff that we look at and we get very invested in is not always a reflection of our own work. Oftentimes it's something like, I watch boxing. I don't watch boxing because I'm a boxer. I love the sweet science, the rhythm of it, the feints, the jabs. You play poker, you like poker. Poker has a very particular thing about it that you can be passionate about without actually playing the game like this person or being this person. You could admire other people who play the game. The Lucent for me is it's utterly compatible with how I think. It is not how I think. And that's what I love about it. It's something new, it's different. And I think it's very weird to want to look at a book or a storyteller's process that's only a mirror reflection, which is unfortunately what I think has happened in the world of Tumblr comics and all of that. People like artwork based on whether they could draw it or whether it looks exactly like their stuff, and they're all trying to tell the same story. So it can be, see, we're the same. That's not what feeds my brain, at all. And with the Lucent, I look at it and I just go, I know when I see something, when it's smart, when it's quality, and when it, and then outside of the intellectualizing, because for all the conversations about criticism and out there, there is something that happens that's aesthetic when you see something that's a work of art, that it hits you. It's Stephen Dedalus in James Joyce's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, I think, talks about it. The supreme aesthetic quality is being like a fading coal. It's like you experience it, it arrests your sensibilities, and it just holds your attention. And for me, when I saw the Lucent, I don't know what it was. I mean, it was someone was talking about it. I can't remember what stream I saw it on, and I went, that take me to where that is. And I didn't watch your streams. I didn't watch. You were streaming every day. God bless you. I wasn't there. I got it after the fact, after it had already funded and it was in demand, and it just hit me. I don't know how to describe that.
Well, that's cool to know, because you think, well, I like this. Surely there must be others out there who like this. And I love my story. I wouldn't have spent so many years of my life with it. And people ask me, like, what else are you going to do? I mean, I've never had any other answer. It's the Lucent till I die.
Yeah.
This story is so grand. It, once the Ella Forsyth arc is done, we can go wherever we want. We can continue on with her if you want, if that's what, if the readers are there and they want that, or we can go in another direction, wherever it leads. So it's very satisfying to know that, there's people like you out there who did make that connection from the get-go, just sort of seeing what I was trying to do. What I want to mention, because you mentioned her earlier, but was J.K. Rowling, who's a victim of her own success, in that she's so mainstream and commercialized now. People look down on her. Like, you would know this in the art world. The art world does not appreciate wildly successful commercial artists unless they are completely under their puppet strings.
Yes,
and
absolutely. Their status strings. Once you don't depend on their status because you have your own wealth, they hate it.
They hate them. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why it's all a big scam. But
yeah, it is.
I think we need to pause and look at what she achieved that so few other modern authors have been able to achieve, which is she built a universe that's unique and full and all that was so compelling that it built a media empire. And then she put out books on schedule, on time, for the next 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And stuck the landing hard.
Yeah.
I've read the Harry Potter books 3 times, twice in English, once in German. And, they got better each time. And the thing that, you get with any author, and this is actually influenced my writing, is you start to notice, you pick up on the little things. And she doesn't get anywhere near as much credit as she deserves for what she actually put into those books and the pre-planning and pre-thought. And there was one thing that's always stuck in my mind, and I didn't catch it until the 3rd reading, was there's a character in the book who is, through almost the entire, up to the 4th book, is a rat.
Yes.
And you don't know he's actually a person who's pretending to be a rat, but you find out in the 4th book. She gave hints that was a man in the 1st book.
Yeah. And
it's so subtle that, Hollywood would never dream of being that subtle. It is so subtle. And it's for the super fans. It was like a little prize and a little thank you to the readers who went back and stuck with it and read it again and picked up that stuff, because essentially it was so like I'd kept rats. I've had pet rats. I know what they are and what they do. She spent an entire paragraph explaining what the rat was doing, and everything it did, rats don't do. So if you don't know rats, you wouldn't pick that up. And if you're just reading the book, you would just glance by it, whatever.
Or
And
if you do and you're thinking that she's not smart, you're not giving her
yeah,
credit.
she doesn't know that.
You're going to say she doesn't know rats. Yeah. Well, you know what someone asked me about?
She was planting that seed from the very beginning, and I love it. And I was like, is this real? I went and I found an internet forum of people talking about this exact thing and pointing out other instances where she'd done the same thing. It was just like, and I love that stuff, and that's what I want to have the Lucent sort of filled with.
Now that's, and guys, that's, I cannot recommend this book enough. And I'll say this, my favorite, one of my first moments, I think there were 2 books out of Harry Potter at the time, and all I knew was what Harry Potter looked like. And somebody said to me, do you think Harry Potter's is going to be as big? It's a huge success now, but do you think it's going to be like the Chronicles of Narnia or Lord of the Rings? And I said, and I sat there for a second. I go, I don't know. It all hinges on one thing. And they said, what? I go, if that scar on his head is an important key to how to destroy the villain. And they were like, what? I said, yeah, it's got to be important for like how they solve everything at the end. And they were just like going, why is that important? I go, well, it's the only thing you see. Like, it's all I talk about. Like, if she's the writer that she's, and then we get to that part. So I had my students that called me up later at the end. Do you know about the scar, Sean? I was like, what? I said, no, because I don't read and I don't like people who, no, I'm kidding. No, it's, this is the thing. What's that great quote from this author whose mother once told her, she grew up to be an author, thank God, but she goes, I don't trust books. The problem with books is you don't know what's in them until it's too late. I thought that was the darkest thing I've ever heard in my life. But J.K. Rowling, what a hero, I would say, as an author. And yeah, there's some people with Thrones that are not, finishing their books, and not resolving.
They're not sticking the landing. They're not
sticking
finishing
the
their
landing.
books. So massive credit where it's due. And I guess I'm in the same situation that you're in with her, with this Brandon Sanderson guy. I haven't read his work. I don't know what he's about, but I listened to it. I listened to his 10-minute video introducing his Kickstarter. And I can tell you from that 10 minutes, like, this guy's the real deal. And he deserves everything he's getting. Just, I could tell from the language he was using. And he said something, I can't remember the exact thing. Like, all my books, he was comparing what he did to how he writes his books with his Kickstarter. He said, it should be a surprise, but not unexpected. And I was like, yes, like, I want to hear that. I don't want to hear you're going to kill the past, let it die, just to subvert my expectations because you want to, do a jerk off session of how crazy a writer you are. Build the story so that when it comes, I'm surprised, satisfied, and it made sense along the way. You would think it's not too much to us, but clearly it is for a lot of these big writers. But that's when he said that stuff and the other stuff he's saying, I understand why this guy's made $20 million. Yeah, he's making a product that people want to read.
But I'll tell you this though too. This is the funniest thing about that, is that you can tell, I think, a lot about people by how they react to greatness and other people's success. And when I saw that, I was excited that an artist was taking their destiny in their hands and was doing something that I couldn't see as anything other than beneficial to anyone with talent. Now, is it beneficial to the tastemakers, the status operators? No, like there's people who will...
The gatekeepers?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people for whom J.K. Rowling is a nightmare. And what is interesting, well, we'll go to the first thing I was thinking about with her. She went off to college. You know what she studied in college? I'm sure you do.
She said it in that thing, didn't she?
Well, she said it in her Harvard commencement address, which I thought was also brilliant.
I can't remember.
But she went off and she studied the classics. And I think that was a really amazing thing, that she went and she studied the classics. That was her area of study when she was in school. And so she had all this stuff. So when I'm listening to Marcus Aurelius, one of his books on audiobook, and he says, "To my brother Severus, I'm always cracking up." I mean, you're just hearing all of the names of her various characters.
Yeah.
And the thing about it with her is she was everything that they claim to love and hold up. She was a single mother living on government benefits, who probably was the greatest tax investment of all time for how much taxes she's paid back. One of her quotes, by the way. And but the thing about her is that she still has that scent of not coming from the right circles with the right people. And ultimately, I'll always believe that's what it's about with her. They can't stand the fact that she didn't go to all the right places, and she kicked their ass in terms of status, money, all the ways they dream of being powerful. She didn't do it with their permission. They only want you to have the power that you give them, that you bestow on them. And that's one of the things about Comicsgate that I think is probably the most important thing for me, and why I'm here and why I'm passionate about it, is that I don't back people because, and maybe that's what it was early on in CG. I don't know. I've never thought about it, but because this person says this person is in Comicsgate, and then the success comes from that, which is, I think, a normal kind of thing. But in CG now, you can go what Abraham Lincoln said, you can rise as high as your talent and your work ethic takes you. That you weren't an established brand. You didn't have this. I mean, sure, you had your web, toon history and your web comic history, but in Comicsgate, you came in and just started working and making things happen. And I think that when I saw the success of the Lucent, which I'll be honest, did not know how successful it was when I went to back it, because I was like, it's just good. But it didn't shock me at all that it was this huge hit, because it got me to order it knowing nothing about you other than the few things I'd heard you say and the quality of the book. And that's what I think is great about it. We're not a status. When people talk about they're all worshiping at the altar of Ethan and Ethan's got to bestow, like, Ethan doesn't have an actual life to live, right? Like, he's not going to the post office, and delivering packages out of a truck, with his family, that he's sitting around trying to be the tastemaker. It's freaking nuts.
Well, that is a massive misunderstanding of it's probably the number one misunderstanding. That comment, that video I recorded 2 weeks ago about that comment, it was that perfectly. I mean, that's what we continuously run into, that's their interpretation of what's happening here and why it's working. If you look at that Brandon Sanderson guy, anyone who looks into him, why is he successful? Okay, well, he got famous for finishing a series and people loved it. So, okay, there you go. Straight off, talent. He's got talent and it's recognized. People know about it. What does he do? How come he raise so much? Well, he talks to the fans directly. He gets on streams. He goes on YouTube. He uses social media to interact with and build a fan base. And then, most importantly, he translates that into an actual thing. He writes books. He actually writes books and releases them and sells them and makes money off them and writes more books. And he doesn't then use that status to start quoting all the latest elite talking points. He doesn't then turn around and insult the fan base now that he's made it. He just does, and I'm not saying this is from Comicsgate. I mean, it's undoubtedly purely a coincidence that he's finding success using the exact same model that we're using. Using the internet and the new
what
technology
you're saying
that
is
we have.
Before he even beheld him, he was listening to John Malin, I think is what you were trying to say.
He was in the room listening to the coach.
And this is the thing. If we can take a quick break, not at all because seriously because I need one, but can I play the trailer again real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Is that all right? I want to play the trailer again for anybody. I know you guys have probably seen it, but for anybody catching this stream later and people watching this, because I know a lot of you guys go into work and you like these long form streams and you can listen to it while you're wrapping things up or you're on a building site or whatever you're doing. By the way, hail Lord Crackhead 33 and Jeremy.
He builds a
we
damn
appreciate the
fine
work.
house, that guy.
That is a damn fine looking house. I know. I got to get in touch with him. He lives near me. I bet he knows everybody I should be hiring and working with, man. So hit up your boy, Jeremy. I'm right here, man. So let's play this trailer because I love this trailer. It's opening my shows until I don't know when. It's going to be opening my certainly until
as
this
long as
launches.
it does.
As long as
I'm
it
very
does.
happy that you're playing it.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure, man. All right, here you guys go. Please, let's all enjoy this and.
You speak as though I have conquered death. I live death every day. I am surrounded by it, smothered by it. Look at you now. He would have everlasting life. You seek to defy death, yet you cannot even defy sleep. And our like sleep is to death. It is a painted death.
Get on that, people. That's the shit right there. I've watched my profanity, but I don't care. I'm doing my best.
Jeremy actually saw that. I showed him that ages ago. I didn't show him because I didn't have the visuals in there, but I played him the sound backstage one day after a thing because I was like, I gotta, it's a little bit different. I gotta play it to someone, and he said, "Man, that's great. I can't wait to see it." So I'm happy that it all came together very well. Another thing, there you go. Listen to the fans. We've done shows talking about trailers and what works and what doesn't. I'm very much of the mind that we should be emulating, Hollywood a little bit more on that front and a little bit less. Hey, I'm Michael and I've been doing this and I've got a comic book and I think you're gonna love it. It's got, there's a time and a place for that. That's more on a stream. We need to be inspiring people with our stories, and people really were intrigued by the start of Waking Dreams. So I thought, okay, well, this is, it's one of my favorite scenes, passages, whatever, that I've done so far is this Gilgamesh Utnapishtim thing. So let's lean into that. And it's great too because it has that quote, the how alike sleep is to death, it's a painted death, so it all ties in, and it all came out great. I'm really happy with it. People have been really praising it and sharing it and playing it, so couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I must say this too, guys. And when I remember when you were talking about how to about being a YouTube streamer, and you said don't be afraid to tell your story, don't be afraid to figure out what your own version of it is. And I think that one of the things I discovered when I did that stream with Narwhal is that I've always been, it's funny, you can watch streams all the time and not think about the fact that maybe that's your parent artist, so to speak. And the person who I most admire as far as streaming goes, and it's not, this is just how I am in my day-to-day life. Ask the people who fix my car, ask the person who comes and does plumbing at my house. Like he came here and we talked for 5 hours about everything. And at the end of it, my plumber goes, I go, how much is it going to be? He's like, oh, just $30. And I was like, it's like here 5 hours. So it's the way I am. John Davidson, if you're out there, love you, man. And this is the thing about it is, he does great work. And this is the thing about it though, is that I love Joe Rogan. And I thought to myself, I love the craft. I have a pretty broad knowledge base, but I love long form conversations with people because I really care about this stuff. Comics saved my life. Comicsgate gave me something back that I lost through the academic training out of and cynicism. and it affects me in the stuff that I buy. It affects me. Like, I got to do a commissioned Nosferatu piece, one of my favorite movies of all time, on the 100th birthday of Nosferatu because of Narwhal.
Mhm.
He made something happen that I didn't even anticipate happening. And when I think about the way you talk about how environment affects your story, this is an example of when I'm writing that I've got to say, you know, the thing that gets me is I was writing a sequence, first of all, with the werewolf character, who on stream I was saying he's kind of like this kind of grumpy character. He's not really anything. And then I thought, so many people in the chat and myself keep saying the same thing. Where are the positive father figures? And then I made the decision. He's going to be a lot more of an adopting father, a caring, wizened guy who's tough, you know, like almost like Whistler is to Blade is the closest analogy I can get to. But he's a deeply caring person who has been, you know, on the receiving end of violence in his life, but has decided to draw a line in the sand. That changed the character because I didn't know how to write cynicism in that way, even though I had 18 years of teaching and all of this education to teach you to be cynical. And so I got to another sequence with Laurel, the lead female character. And this is the funny thing. And I was thinking about all of these things you see in stories and narrative. And I was like going, and this is going to be a teachable moment where she doesn't thank him for saving her life. And I'm going to, you know, have that be a point right here. And I thought, that makes me feel dirty and disgusted. No, I'm going to have a moment where she stops the narrative in this one panel and says, thank you for saving my life. And it shows what an appreciative, good person is. Do you know what I mean? And I can't write cynicism. I don't hate people. I know there are horrible people in this world. I met plenty of them as a kid, but I keep reaching for the good people, the passionate people, and the artists who dream optimistically, passionately, and for who this shit is real. And you're one of those people. And it's to me, it was a miracle when you had me to launch my book on your stream. And I will tell you this: the one thing I will never regret, and I know you were so great about it, was pre-launching my stream, because I got with my wife and my 2 kids before we hit the launch button, and I said, we don't do a lot of praying in our household. I'm working on that with myself. It's not my, you know, everybody's got their own different thing. This isn't a sermon, but I said, I want to put our heads together, and whatever this is, I want to have the peace to take it as it comes and to handle it and to have it go, because it was such a big deal to me. And everything about launching with you was a part to me of that, meeting the right people and opening doors. And I get to talk about Gilgamesh with somebody. Are you kidding? There's a fellow Bond SNA fan here. Are you kidding? Do you know what I'm talking about?
There's Enkidu fans in Comicsgate. Yeah.
This
there's
is
something
like
for
winning
everyone.
the lottery to me. And life is short,
No,
as you've said.
you're so right. You're so right. And that's why I knew, as you know, as much as I was giving up leaving Webtoons, I had to go. I didn't even question it. You know, I heard the call and I went. And this was when there was no books. Like, this is when, and then Lost Souls came out, and there was a Cyberfrog, and there was a Doug TeNapel book, and then Graveyard Shift. There wasn't much going on, but I knew I had to come and be a part of this. And you're so right. You know, how blessed are we? Narwhal calls it's the French New Wave for comic books. I picture it as more of, I would always daydream what it was like in the start of the 20th century in Paris. And you would go to a cafe and there's, you know, all these impressionist artists or whatever they were, like, you know, just this crazy energy, and they're making all this art that would be the most famous art for the next 100 and whatever years. And I feel like this is it. You know, this is the new beginning, because there's no one else out there doing what we're doing. There's amazing artists. I'm not a guy who just wants to crap on every single mainstream artist. There's some of the top talents still working in the mainstream, but what are they working on? What are they drawing? They're drawing what I essentially consider at this point dead characters. They're husks. They're dead. There's nothing left in them. Anything that was in them has moved on to somewhere else. It's been, sucked out. The writers are they're caught in this, corporate system. So they're not. I mean, we've seen this. Think back to the 80s.
Yeah.
All the movies now are making remakes of movies from the 80s because in the 80s they were making all this cool new stuff. Well,
Yeah.
we're doing that. It doesn't have the prestige right now.
Right
that,
now, yeah.
Other things might have. But who knows what the future will hold. It's like no one would have or could have looked at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first copy.
Yep.
And dreamed what that would become.
Yep.
It
And the
never
black
could
and
have
white
happened.
boom that would follow. And I think, it's so funny to think about this stuff. It is only one life. It is short. And you've got to take a swing. You've got to go out there and you got to say, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to get in that ring. And I think that everybody that I'm meeting in CG and that has been great. And I know, it's easy to get, if we get down in the weeds of anything, you're going to find that, there's always something that's going to bother somebody. But I have to be honest, people are in this in my experience, the people I've interacted with are in this for the right reasons in terms of they love this art form and they have things they care about more than things they don't care about. They're not talking about what they hate and what they dislike, because that's, resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. One of the things that always has kept me going and fueled me is taking complete and utter joy in other people's successes. And I want to be in an environment where people are like, wow, that's great. You're doing that. That's so cool. And that's what people do here. And I tell you what, you could do the greatest painting in the world in academia and it would not matter. Someone would have to say something shitty to you. Like literally say something shitty to you in person at an opening if your stuff is too good. And they will look at shit on a wall and everyone will come up and pat the person who did it on the back. Good boy. Stay in that box. Stay average.
You're saying all the right things.
Yes. You're saying all the right things. You're not trying and saying, look at how glorious my not trying is. And it's poison.
It's I've like I said, I mentioned earlier, I've been there just at the maybe coming in too late or not have the talent that I needed to have in rollerblading. I got to hang out with some really cool, amazing athletes. I got to travel to New Zealand and compete in X Games stuff and everything, but I was always on the sidelines. I didn't have the talent. I didn't, and I got into a bit too late. And then in poker, I didn't get the talent that I needed until I was a bit too old and I had other commitments that started coming in and all that sort of stuff. It always just seemed like I was just on the cusp, but I could never quite make it.
I felt
so
that
when I
life,
saw,
honestly.
yeah, you can and you see and you're happy that your friends made it, because you make friends with the people in that group, and they're like, I was one of the best friends with a guy who was like number 2 in the world on from rollerblading. For 10 years, that was his job, traveling the world doing that. And you're always super happy for them, but you wish you could do it as well. So that's part of it as well. When Comicsgate rolled around, I was like, I need to be on the ground floor of this. Even when Gamergate happened, I was there when the whole thing unfurled, but I wasn't really in a place where I could take part. And for anyone who isn't aware, like Gamergate is Comicsgate times 1,000 in terms of scale, maybe even 10,000. It was so massive. It was so massive that when the first 3 months that you would type in Gamergate into the Twitter search bar and put latest, it was a non-stop stream of tweets, just non-stop for 3 months. It was so massive. And I think even things like a concept of the alt-right came about, built in the media as a response to how big it was.
It was
huge.
Amazing. But this is the thing about it too, just as someone who's wasn't there and a layman to it, it is the amount of people who got into it who were, pushing this political agenda is like 8,000-fold what comics is, because comics was a smaller industry. The damage that was done to the credibility of people, or the careers that were ruined, sidelined, or stopped from succeeding for the vanity and narcissism of these, psychos for all intents and purposes. In every other, it was so horrific in every other way. And you know what happened in science fiction, fantasy writing. We've talked about that on a stream before. They actually got the H.P. Lovecraft name awards. The Howies changed, because H.P. Lovecraft was racist. And I'm like going, well, so was, what's her name? God, I always forget her name. Margaret Sanger, but it doesn't seem to. And really
by today's standards, everyone 100 years ago was
but
super
that's
racist.
not what he's famous for. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that was, we're not celebrating his amazing racist writings. and this is the thing about it that was so fascinating to me, is that that stuff was being spouted at me, the Gamergate stuff, because I wasn't in the gaming industry, by students all the time. And I was like, what is this? Like it wasn't my bag. But in comics, why it's unique is it's almost like the Cliff's Notes version of Gamergate. Like, it's really easy to watch it implode. Like, it's a shorter arc. It's not a big enough industry to sustain it. They killed DC and Marvel Comics in like what, 7 or 8 years? That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the most significant difference is that purely by luck of the medium, we can create equal to or better than product than the mainstream offering as independents. You can't do that in games. And trust me, people wanted to pivot to making games and starting their own thing. It's just not feasible. You're talking tens of millions to potentially hundreds of millions of dollars investment. It was never going to happen. So they had no pivot moment that we had in 2018, 2019. So they ended up just what all these sort of movements do, descending into personalities and eating itself,
attacking each other. And that's the thing too. So here's the other thing though that makes Comicsgate unique. One of the core members, critics of comics of that time, one of the most prominent voices, is the person who pivoted to make the first Comicsgate book. By their definition. I always say this, it's like his and John Malin, for that matter too, their importance can't ever be overstated to me. It's they like that, same thing goes with Ethan, because I think for a lot of people, Ethan was a huge jumping on point. But just the very fact that, and by the way, is Graveyard Shift 4 still open, or did it close yet? Was thinking about
I think
that.
it must be closed while we were talking. I'm pretty sure.
I've been playing the trailer for that on every episode too, because I was like, that's we got to get the word out. But it's one of those things that when you look at John and you look at everything that he's done, and I talk about it, on a lot of streams, because it's just I remember watching his interview with Pete Samedi, where he was talking about this was a long night. Yeah, I mean, guys, every person in Comicsgate, EVS is still going. That's right, people. Every time that any of us do something like this, I was in a career where you can't be associated with this and stay in that career. Like, you can't. It's literally the birthing place for all of these horrific ideas. But the freedom of being able to make artwork and to be able to say what you want to say is something I thought we were guaranteed, certainly in terms of academic freedom, but at least in this country is a law of the land. And I look at this stuff and I go, all we're asking for here is the right to make quality books and to tell stories. And what you said about the Lucent, when you said it's weird, it's not like something you're going to see in the mainstream, that is exactly what my attitude is with Nosfero. It's this person. It's a story that I haven't seen, that I want to see done. I'm working in gouache. I'm working, doing all of this stuff that's so completely, what people would think would be what the artists would do in other art forms, but it's like that's what you and I are doing. You're like, I'm going to put Gilgamesh in the story. And there's a little clue, and if you go back and read this, it's just quality.
When you think we have such sort of, it's so difficult to put yourself into the zeitgeist of the day when these massively popular IPs first hit the scene.
Yeah.
I was a kid. I don't remember the origins of the Turtles as well as others might. My first introduction to the Turtles was action figures, and then very shortly after that, the cartoon. But
can
you can
that
imagine.
I want you to keep talking. I'll be right back. I have to grab something from upstairs. Keep talking. All right, hold the show.
So, I will hold the show. I will hold the show. I'll just talk to the camera. So you can imagine. I always hate talking to the camera, but that's okay. We'll continue on. When you see like, oh, this is going to be the next big thing. It's these turtles that got in a mutagen goo, and now they grew up and they do ninja, like ninjutsu. It's off the wall. And then you go back and so you imagine a time when people just weren't as familiar with the kinds of superheroes that Marvel put out. Spider-Man. Well, what is he? Well, he's a guy who's got the proportionate abilities of a spider. You can climb on walls and shoot webbing, and that sort of. And he gets around this. Like, some of this stuff is crazy. It's off the wall, but we think of it as normal now because we're so used to it. But that's only because we've had it for so long now. This is the sort of stuff that we need to do. I don't know if you heard any of that, but
I did. I heard all of it.
Okay. This is the sort of stuff we need to be doing. We need to be making stuff that's a bit weird and crazy and out there that isn't safe. That has a chance.
History.
I think that's why I think Cyberfrog took off.
You guys see this? Yeah. This is the first licensed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles product. And I had 50 sets of these because they're made of lead and they just kept breaking. The weapons kept breaking. And I think they're fabulously expensive now. But I got this a while back to relive my youth. But these are just little lead by, funny enough, a miniature company called Dark Horse Miniatures, not the comic book company. And they were the very first licensed product. The painting on the package, originally it was just Dark Horse packaging of this company. Then they had a painted thing when it started to take off. But this is like such a part. I remember when they all had red headbands. That's what I was into. And then the cartoon came out and I was like, this is everyone's going to see this now. And then it went huge. And I tell people this, don't think when you're looking at Comicsgate little figures or little things like that it can't
That's
be
exactly what I was thinking. This
of something
looks like
huge.
A Comicsgate thing.
So there's some Cyberfrog metal figures. I'm gonna get those because that's what this reminds me of that.
And look at that drawing. It's not the most professional.
How dare you?
No,
kidding. Just kidding. I know.
It looks like some guys who were just
doing it.
Doing it.
Yeah, they were feeling it. It was real, and I think that
it looks like it was colored in with colored pencils.
Yeah, he was doing everything with acrylics. Let me move you back there. He was doing everything with acrylics and some drawing, and he was looking at Simon Bisley. He was a fan of Simon Bisley. But this is the thing about it for me. Comics were everything, and it's like, I go back, I see your bande dessinée book, that you were showing. This is the first book I saw. And I just think, can you imagine that person probably had no idea? Have you ever written them? Are they still with us? Is the artist still with us? The artist writer?
Which one?
The book, the first bande dessinée book you bought.
Oh yeah. No, I just got this. So this is he did this back in, I don't know when he did this. Let's have a look. He's not that old. He's probably in his 40s.
Yeah. Because
when
Mobius
did
was
this
in his
come out?
prime until he passed, so you never know.
Wow, did this come out in no way. It came out in 95, 2014. Oh, maybe it's a reprint from 1996. Anyway, 2014, whatever. Whenever it came out, this is new.
Mhm.
This is his newest stuff. It's called Raven because he did this, which is a telling of Long John Silver, which is awesome. What is
You've
that?
got to. So have you
what I've got
ever
in
written
here.
him?
Oh, I had to flatten
flatten.
out my Kenneth
Viking Wolf.
Rocafort. Yeah.
So have you ever written to this person?
No, I haven't. I suppose I
I'm
should.
a big believer in writing to any artist, especially because you know a little bit of the language if he's French, or I don't know if he's Italian or what his background is.
He's French.
That's the thing, is that I always think it's worth doing, because can you imagine if the opportunity happened down the road for you to get a pinup or a cover off of this person who launched that? I mean, that would be amazing.
That would be amazing. I've always sort of daydreamed of him coming on the show and Mel is interpreting, and
it starts with that email. It starts with a first email and saying that
reach
you love
out to
somebody's
him.
work.
I never understood why these guys don't crowdfund. I mean, they've got their publishing deals. I do get it, but so he wrote his pirate book. Anyway, there's a character in that which is Raven.
Yeah.
And this is the follow-up to that.
Man.
And so I haven't read this yet, but just there you go. I mean, you can sort of see what this is I didn't know this existed, this sort of stuff until
when you see
French
this
comics.
Joker in the chat, by the way, when you see this Joker in the chat, this is one of my groomsmen from my wedding. I've known this guy since freshman year of college. And he is this thing where whenever I start getting people excited to go do something, I'm like, go out there, contact this person. That's what he's referring to, because this is why I've been emailing back and forth and talking with Kevin Conran, the guy who did all the concept art for Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. That came out of that, me just saying, I love your work, hello. And he just sent me a message. He goes, I've been watching you on YouTube, and I just wanted to say, hey, and how are you doing? How are things? And I was like, they're great.
Maybe I will.
But this is the thing. You never know what kind of day people are having. Oh, Sumo Authority, take care. And all of you guys who've been sticking it out with us here. Thank you. But this is the thing I always say. When I wrote Laura Zuccari, I don't know if you know her, but she's an Italian who does stuff for humanoids. She is incredible. She's influenced by Mobius, Miyazaki, and Andrew Wyeth. She breaks my heart. Her stuff is so good. And I wrote her, and I also wrote the woman who did the costume designs for Apocalypto, Maya Robeo. And she also did the costumes for Avatar that they used for reference. And I wrote her a letter. I said, I'm such a huge fan. I show your work to my students. And she goes, I don't ever get fan letters. This is so nice. And I went, you don't get, you never know.
That is so true. We were showing off this stuff. This is Victoria's favorite stuff. It's called Mortelle Adele. And she's like a spunky little brat who's always up to no good. Victoria loves her. And this is this is French culture. The kids read comics like this.
Yeah. Sorry, I got to point out, RB and I are tag teaming you now. Look at what he just wrote there. He's a devil. Don't trust this guy. He knows me from way back.
Yeah, no, I absolutely would. I absolutely would feel.
And
amazing.
Laura Zuccari is absolutely fantastic. If
but,
anybody doesn't know her stuff, that's beautiful, man.
That Victoria, I think she drew a picture and just like a 6-year-old would.
Yeah.
And sent her a thank you note or something like that, and she sent her a whole package, signed and everything like that, and then she sent this and with her own signature on it and stuff. And
she just don't
the
know
same
it
one. Yeah, totally. There's another one as well, called the Le Triplets, which is the triplets. Same thing. Victoria's gotten handwritten notes back from her on posters and stuff like that.
Lord.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't really think of that, but no, that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I look at this, like, this is what I want to make comics about. You know, these, like, you can just look into this world and it's real. You know, it's so vast and
creates that immaculate reality Kurosawa was
exactly,
about.
yeah, immaculate reality. That, I mean, I think that sort of stems back to Mobius. Whenever I see his stuff, which, you know, this is what made me want to turn my story into.
I hate putting this on the screen, Michael, but I have to make sure that.
Yeah, the whole house.
No, listen, like, I don't know if you watched the stream, but when I had Dan on and we were having another Shanth marathon stream, and we were looking at Philippe Drouillet's stuff, one of the founders of heavy metal. You might know his stuff, but he does these huge drawings, and I thought, I get to know you guys better, and we all benefit when we share artwork. It was my favorite part of teaching, was sharing books. That was.
I think I'm gonna. Antoine actually asked, you know, can you put together a list? And I said, well, I think what I'm gonna do is, because I've got, you know, I don't know, I've got like 20 BDs here that I've got physically. Might start a series and just sort of going through each one, you know, just to sort of praise them essentially and just point out cool panels and the different sort of storytelling and stuff like that.
Well, if you want a wingman for anything like that ever, if it makes it easier, if it doesn't, just go solo, man. But if you ever want someone to sit around and just freak out about the love of comics and European comics,
I love that. And I always say, I said this to Kelsey when I found out he's a massive BD fan as well, is that, and I wish I'd archived this, but someone said, what's your favorite European comic art on Twitter? It was the most incredible and humbling thread I've ever seen, because you remember in Good Will Hunting, when the maths professor is having a hard time with Will because he's like, I wish I'd never met you, so then I would, because then I would know that there's someone out there like you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he's just like, you're on such another level.
Yeah.
That it kind of broke his world. And reading that thread was like, there's hundreds of these people. There's hundreds of these artists who were at this caliber working, and I just wasn't aware of it until now.
Yep.
And it stretches back for decades.
That's right.
It's more, it's like, it blows my mind. And it's more than I could ever discover.
It's an ocean.
Because exactly. And we're sort of here nitpicking over America Chavez and Squirrel Girl when there's this happening. Like, we need to be talking about this. This is insane.
Well, and that's the thing, though, right? Is that when we do that, we're playing their game, but not how people think. When we do that, what we're doing is we are not playing their game like, oh, they want us to do this. What we're doing is we're putting up on an altar their work and talking about it, right? That's the dream, is to get attention for this stuff. Even bad attention doesn't matter to them, because the attention they get is disingenuous. So it's bad attention anyway. And what they're most terrified of is to empower. Hey, Dan, it's great to see you, brother. It's what they're most terrified about, and someone is seconding that, by the way, and what we're not afraid of is to show really great work. That's why you see people go off on a Steranko tangent that gets to the point of, you know, a religious sermon. That's why you hear us talking about Bond Destiné work. Dave Stevens' work, you know, saved my life. Frank Frazetta was the artist I saw that I said, this person gets what I'm talking about. Like, this person, I never will be this person. Exactly what you were saying. I will never probably rise to this level. No one can. I mean, this guy's, you know, he's Frank Frazetta. They broke the mold when they made him. But I saw it and I went, this person gets how I feel about color, the human form, atmosphere, monsters. He gets it. And I love that I get to have his work to look at. It enriches my life. Things are hard enough without looking at, diarrhea as your roadmap. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? It's life is hard enough. Look at the gold. Look at the beautiful work like
Even
this.
even when I was in Germany, I hadn't found this stuff, and I was
Yeah.
looking. They have comic shops there, but it was all Marvel and DC stuff, which is funny. Because it's so close to it's sandwiched right there between France and Italy.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know this was there, and I think it's time to start shouting it from the rooftops, because I know that there's people in my audience who, I mean, they're vaguely aware of it now because I mention it every now and then. But no, you're so right. I mean, I wouldn't be here now because I wouldn't have been set on that trajectory if I hadn't have run into this guy in that chance encounter in a
serendipity, man.
Aachen shop in Vernon or wherever the hell I was in France. Yeah, it's funny how that happens, and it's so true. Like, we all have our favorite artists and guys like that, and it's uplifting, it's inspiring, it's they can teach you as well. Kenneth Rocafort is one of those guys.
Yeah,
Like,
he is.
when I was working on that Malin piece, one of the layouts that I did, I actually showed them off afterwards, and actually the chat agreed that layout was the best. And I was like, I want to draw clouds like Kenneth friggin' Rocafort. No one draws clouds like Kenneth Rocafort. So I went and I found a piece. I was like, yes, he does these sweeping, like, this is the sort of stuff that we can do. You don't have to just draw a cloud the same old way you always draw a cloud. You can take it to the limit, take it to the next level.
Yeah, if we're not inspired by the great artists, we might as well, they might as well not have existed at all. We might as well not have drawn breath. I mean, these people are there. Like, if Da Vinci exists, if anybody hasn't poured over, and I've got my massive Da Vinci book and my massive Michelangelo book up there, what are we doing? And the same thing goes with special effects artists like Rick Baker. I want to be, like, I told my wife once, and I mean it literally, I don't know if she understood this, I want to die in an avalanche of art and comic books. Like, that's how I want to go. Just crushed.
You just reminded me of, and this is unfortunate that you brought that up, but I was just on Twitter before we started, and it's an oldie but a goodie. It's a shared article of a guy in England who died crushed under the weight of his porn collection that fell through his ceiling and
that's
killed
my
him.
second choice.
There you go. So he had porn. You can have art books. So just make sure if you had a double story house, make sure the ceiling is all secure there, especially if you've got like.
No, this is my dream. I'm going to start chipping away
material.
Listen, don't try to stop my dreams. But look at that ship. I mean, things like Ivan. I think his name is Ivanovsky. I can never pronounce his name right, but he does these. He's a Russian painter who does these, fire on the water ship, things from way back. I forget what century it was he was painting. But I look at, some of the masters. That European tradition is alive in the bande dessinée, and it's been alive in American comics, and we're just reconnecting with our heritage. And by the way, our human heritage is manga, is bande dessinée, is American comics. It's all connected. But the thing for me is that the bande dessinée, in terms of its eminence and its prevalence as an influence in American comics, we could be doing better as evangelists or advocates for it, and saying, like, pulp has got a lot of people who talk about it and support it, but bande dessinée is like an art miracle. It's what Ethan talks about when he talks about wanting Cyberfrog to be like Harry Potter. That's what the newest issue of Tintin back in the day, or Blueberry back in the day, was.
We were talking on my stream today about, what exactly is it, what we're doing here with crowdfunding, because we seem to be, at least a lot of the backers seem to be moving away from becoming investors in the creation process because they're worried about time. And it's a discussion about that. But someone brought, I think it was Brian Criscow brought up in the chat, the French system works. If this is a change that's going to happen, and we as creators aren't going to be driving that, the backers will vote with their wallets. They'll be driving that. And okay, maybe it's different to what we have now, but maybe it gets us a little bit closer to the French system. And well, at least we know that system works. I mean,
it does.
You go into any bande dessinée store in France, it's an ocean. It's too much. You can't decide.
They don't tell you we can't
stuck.
get you the first issue of that anymore. They tell you the first volume of that, just like with manga, just like with Harry Potter, and just like, dare I say, Michael, dare I say,
wait till that's a hardcover.
It'll be a hardcover.
Bande dessinée.
My favorite movie and the best movie of all time, it just is, deal with it, is Lawrence of Arabia. And there's a part of me that just wants to say, it will be a hardcover.
No!
It is
what does
written.
He say? What does he scream? No.
Oh, what do you mean?
What does he say?
Oh, no. Who are you? Which one? Which thing are you talking about?
I'm just thinking in the desert. Is he saying no? He's screaming something. Oh God, it's gonna eat me now.
Which thing?
Gone. It's been in that movie. There's like a famous scene. There's a close up, and he's in the desert, obviously.
Yeah,
and he's like yelling. I can't remember what it is though. Now I'm starting to. It's starting to get blended with Lord of the Rings scene, so it's gone. Forget it.
No, yeah, those two are. Yeah, that movie I have committed. Look at this. This is my college friend. Every time I visited you, I ended up organizing your endless piles of comics and books. I will not show you what's happening around me right now, but I will tell you the Lucent is well taken care of. This sounds like the start of the Mike and Sean French Bande Dessinée weekly streams. Here's the thing, guys.
We need to get Kelsey in.
Oh my God, of course.
Point. But what I would do is I would actually make these videos because I need to make videos again. I noticed I got a significant uptick in subscribers since I started doing videos again. And that will be the point. The whole point is we need to get more people who are interested in comics over to our corner of YouTube, seeing what we're doing. And I think this would be good content for that. Like, it's not going to be the most popular content out there, but the people it will attract, are exactly the kind of people we want here.
The most important thing, and this is what I love about Comicsgate, is for you to do what this needs to be. And I will always, it's like if you're making short videos about, Bande Dessinée books, like I'm going to introduce you to this and that grows the channel. Awesome. I will always be game to have you and Kelsey on or whatever and do a psycho marathon stream about any of this stuff, because that seems to be, and just for who was it? Was it John? I'm trying to think of who back in the chat. It's not that far back. Dared to accuse me of going and taking a bathroom break. I want to say this to you, my friends. I want to say this to you, folks. I've been on stream for 2 hours and 43 minutes at this point. It is 3:43 in the morning here. I don't even want to tell you what time I got up, but it was early. And Rock, my RB friend, I won't say your full name out in the chat. He knows this is like second win time. Yeah, 24-hour marathon.
Dan has an obscene amount of BD books. We'll get Dan in on it as well.
Yeah, because Dan and I were talking about how much. Okay, I'm going to link Dan to RB in the chat. RB sent me a book when I was just out of college of Massimiliano Frizzado's stuff, and he said, "This is what your stuff. I feel like your stuff is going to be." And I saw it, Dan. Please forgive me. And I said, "What? This isn't what my stuff's going to be like. I'm going to be like these American comic book artists." And he doesn't know what he's talking about. Then, fast forward to me doing this watercolor and gouache stuff, and this was a while when I first started getting into it. I found that book in a stack, and I went, he was right. That's exactly.
He knew you better than you knew yourself.
He knew me better. Yeah, this is go time for Sean. People, beware. But this is the thing about it, right? You can't really call it a bathroom break when it's that's an emergency. So true. So true. Well said, Stephen Rockwood. But this is
Who needs a bathroom break when you've just got a bottle in front of you? You can just pee right
exactly.
into it.
Who needs a bathroom break when all you eat is Comicsgate comics, people? That's 0 calories and nonstop adrenaline. But this is the thing, right? Is that when I look at this stuff, and I got the book of Frazato's originals. If you saw it, you'd go, "Holy cow, Shanth, how have you not heard of this stuff?" But it's like you find the stuff sometimes when it's right. And for me, it's interesting. We have this in common. My 30s were this. I think it's because I ran out of, like, I was so tired and so, like fatherhood, and all that other stuff. Like I've been, you get to a point where keeping up bullshit is not possible for you. You just can't anymore. You're too tired. And you're like, and what you said, I've got a certain amount of time in my life. Is this what I want to go into my ground? Is this the hill I want to die on? This crazy, bureaucratic, soul-crushing way of art? Or do I want to paint things that have passion and are sexy and have action and violence, but only when I need them to be there? Narratively, they have heart. Like that painting I did of the King Kong hand holding basically a beautiful woman who had a baby gorilla sleeping on her. It was the most dad thing. It was the most Frazetta thing. It was all those things. And when I look at the Lucent, it's like Michael on 11.
I tell you what, when someone asks you, what would you do if you won the lottery? And your first instinct, without even thinking, is imagine how much time I would have to draw my book.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah,
you're doing what you're meant to be doing. And everything that I've been doing now since late 2019 is a slow, methodical grind to get myself into that position. And I always say it's like, you're walking up the mountain and it's one step at a time. Every day, you just keep your eye on the ground in front of you and take that next step. Because if you try and look up at the peak and see how far away it is and how impossible it looks to get there, that's when the seeds of doubt start stepping in. But actually, the floor in front of you is just another step forward. And that's what you do every day. And that's how you win. But then every now and then, reward yourself by looking back and seeing how far you've come. I'm making decent money on YouTube now with just not even 3,000 subscribers. And that is being funneled into more books. That wouldn't have been able to happen without that. And the fact that money is coming in means I can justify to my family that this is a viable use of my time. Which is how I want to spend my time. So it is it's very exciting to think about the future and what could potentially happen. It's going to be, it's not real yet, but I know it's coming, and it's coming quick. That the Painted Death launch that I've daydreamed about for 2 years now is nearly upon us. That is going to be the moment of truth for me, to see what happens, because no one really knows. We can guess, we can speculate. I certainly know that I'm going to put on a hell of a show.
I know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be back in that book. That's the reality of it. I can know. That is certain. If I'm alive, it's happening. If I'm dead, I'll find a way. And this is the
power of attorney.
And
I think you must back the Lucent.
and I'll say this too, guys. And I think this is a great way for us to kind of wrap things up too, as well, with that, because my wife came into the room the other day, and some money had just come in from the Indiegogo. There'd been another disbursement. And then I had just completed a trailer for Gabe and of the commission for Narwhal, and that money had come in. My wife just walked into the room, and she's had my back, and she said, "Hi, Comicsgate," just so everybody knows. And she said, "Thank you for working so hard at this." And I just want to say to Comicsgate, thank you guys so much, to everybody in the chat, to everybody in Comicsgate catching this on a repeat. I love you guys. I love what we're doing here. I'm so proud of Nosfero. I am so proud to be creating artwork at the same time that Michael Bancroft is creating artwork, and that we get to be in this together, that we get to be doing this stuff. And I think that I can't even overstate that you guys have made this possible. This is the end result of dreams that we've been having for far longer than Comicsgate has existed. We've been doing this work and putting this time in. And this is sort of this miracle that you can't make happen. You can't make a phenomenon like Comicsgate. It's, again, preparation meeting opportunity happen. And we are so grateful. And if you guys continue to back us, we will continue to work our asses off to make it a great thing. Michael, what closing thoughts do you have?
Well, you want me to follow that? That was perfect. That was brilliant. I mean, that's everything I want to say. I mean, I'll be a little bit self-promotional here.
Yes, please do.
I mean, there's so many things now. It's great. I mean, it's a lot of work, but I love doing it. So there's the channel. Please subscribe to my channel, Michael Bancroft. We do, for the moment, it's 4 nights a week. It might slot to 3. Late night with Comicsgate. We talk comics, crowdfunding, Comicsgate, and we promote a book on those nights. There's also the draw stream for the upcoming book, Painted Death. So please do go and sign up for the mailing list. I'm still working out the benefits. I didn't want to like put it all in there straight away without figuring it out. But there'll be things like secret perks at discount, stuff like that. I'm thinking of some other creative ways of rewarding people who sign up. I do like a raffle. They're always fun. A live stream raffle, that sort of stuff. So it will definitely be worth your while if you do sign up to the book. Also, check out cgnow.net. Nearly, I think it's 70 books on there now and growing. It's just growing as fast as people are able to get books onto their stores and hold them and get them out and everything. So, but that's an exciting development. So check that out as well. And also follow me on Twitter at the Lucent Comic.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And thank you, Michael, for coming on the show. I appreciate it so much, brother. Stick around. I'll say hi real quick after this. I know you probably got to get going. Thank you for a generous 3 hours of your time to come in here and talk.
It was my pleasure. I love talking about all this stuff.
Yeah, I hope everybody leaves this stream more inspired. I know I'm leaving it more inspired. The more I talk about artists and talk with artists about what they're doing, if we can make this channel a place where you guys get, a little bit of, inspiration here, then we're doing what we're supposed to be doing here, guys. Thank you guys again. God bless you all. Love you, and take care. And we will see you guys soon. As always, I've got to close out with a song that I composed for my dear friends. And this one's for you guys. Peace and take care and stay gold.
Here's a little something for you busters. Yeah.
You're not even learning anything on the street.
Yeah.
You think I'm stupid, son?
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say to you, boy?
Yeah.
Do ya?
What's up with that?
Look at me, damn it!
Y'all cowards don't even smoke crack. What's up with
You
that?
smoke crack, don't you?
Y'all cowards don't even smoke crack.
Look at me, boy!
Hey to
You
you,
smoke crack, don't you?
don't even smoke crack.
You know what that does to you? Huh? You smoke crack, don't you?
Smoke crack.
Go on and do it exponentially.
What's up with that?
It kills your brain cells, son. It kills your brain cells.
Don't even smoke crack.
No guts, huh?
I apologize. I forgot you were there. You may go now.